Are there any Polar Express passengers in need of refreshment?
Santa Claus and ho ho ho.
Where's the Tylenol? Welcome to the party, pal.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Son of a nutcracker!
Popo Gijo.
Look here beneath my robe.
Oh, come on. Crimson, the German tradition is the pickle goes in the tree, not your pants.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Cheap Seat Critics podcast during our fun, festive season of A Christmas Carol. Today, which, we're recovering another one of those. But, hey, first off, hello, I'm the Geeky Writer.
I'm Crimson Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks. What a day we are having. Hey, if you're listening from, let's see, Scrooge and Marley's, just down the way, you can find us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and new Blue Sky. We are also on YouTube and Rumble for visual side of things, if you prefer that over the audio. And we're on LetterBoxd if you're interested in the math and the graphs and the numbers and all that.
Yeah, and we'll thank you for your intro as always, Springs. But as I said, we're covering the next in the line for our bunch of Christmas Carol films for feeling festive this year. Today we're
1984 one.
Yeah, today we're covering the 1984 one. Which had pretty much starring George C. Scott. It was a made-for-TV movie, and I guess that's my segue into facts. If anyone wants me to dive into that.
Well, it's interesting that so far you, writer, have taken hold of two made-for-TV movies we've covered.
What was the other one?
Being this and All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I did do that one. But yeah.
And both British at that.
Yeah, what can I say? I love the Brits and their tea. I could dive right into the facts, or do you want to give your histories first, gentlemen? Not that it's going to be much more expansive than our first one.
You can do facts.
All right. Because being as a made-for-TV movie, I pretty much found nothing to do with the budget, other than it was made for TV. It originally aired on CBS on December 17th, 1984.
Very cool.
Yeah. This is probably the only version of A Christmas Carol in where Scrooge wears dress pants and dress shirt, vest, and a smoking jacket instead of his nightshirt, slippers, and cap. Rumor has it that George C. Scott openly reeled at the very idea of playing Scrooge under such conditions, especially in the English winter. In the book, Scrooge wears his hat, his shirt, pants, vest, dressing gown, and slippers. So Scott's clothing is very close to the book.
Oh. Interesting. Didn't pick up.
Yeah. Also, all these facts are taken off the internet, so, take it with a grain of salt. Better late than never on the warning, I guess, but, The scenes set in the Cratchit family house were filmed in a wine merchant's, which is still there. The particular building was next door to a car garage. The scene in which Scrooge visits and learns of Tiny Tim's death had to be reshot owing to an extractor fan drowning out the actor's speech from the body shop on the other side of the hall.
Huh. Interesting that they couldn't stop that for the production usage of the shot. They had to wait for it to finish.
I think it lends itself to the TV budget. There's only so much you can do with the money weight you can throw around at that point. Because, normally, right, when you're renting out a location, you could typically pay people off, like, hey, we're going to be filming this day, so, don't do work, or that sort of thing. And
yeah.
You typically pay people when you do that. Or you just have really, really good business relationships, which is also very important when you're filming. This is the only traditional adaptation of A Christmas Carol where Scrooge's father is seen on screen. This version shows Scrooge's father and him interacting outside the schoolhouse when Fran comes to fetch him. It's very informative for Scrooge's character development, showing how unconcerned his father feels towards him. But that is absent from, I think, every other one that I know that I've seen of this show.
I believe so. And I think it's somewhat of a creative liberty because I don't think in the book he actually sees his father. Fran just talks about him.
Yeah.
You read the book?
I have.
Yeah.
Long time ago. But
Yeah. Same for me. I've read the book a long time ago. But I think you're right in that it is a creative liberty. And I guess we'll talk about how we feel about that scene when we get there and what it does for Scrooge as a character. Funny enough, Charles Dickens lost the rights to A Christmas Carol in a lawsuit filed by numerous imposters claiming the story as their own. Following the lawsuit, Dickens wrote Bleak House, an equally successful novel about corruption in the English courts.
oh, didn't know that.
And that is my facts, gentlemen.
So who owns the rights to Christmas Carol then now?
I have no idea.
That's
Not Charles
interesting.
Dickens.
No, but more
he-
iterations
yeah.
are still made of it, adaptations. So
Well, it's
They
public
must
domain
get-
at this point.
yeah,
Oh, it is?
I imagine it's public domain at this point. Yeah.
It's over 100 years old.
Oh. Well, I guess that's true.
We're gonna do a 5-act structure. Popcorn, so you'll be able to jump around in whatever act you would like. But first, before we jump in, I would like to offer you both the opportunity to throw in any facts of your own if you have any.
I don't have any facts, but I do have a history I can provide, which is the same history pretty much from our previous Christmas Carol movie, Scrooge, where I've seen a couple iterations. This one, it was my first time seeing. I bought this last year to watch for Christmas, and I didn't find the time to. So now I did find the time for the podcast to watch it. It worked out.
Yeah, one could say you almost didn't find the time to watch this. For
One
the
could say
podcast.
that. Yeah.
We
One
can't,
could
we can't,
absolutely
can't
say
prove that, Sprinks. That was off the podcast.
You have no evidence.
Sorry, peeking behind the robes, as they say.
Yeah.
Yes. Behind my ropes.
But yeah, I mean, so good, perfect excuse to watch it then. So this is your first time properly watching this, I imagine.
Yes.
Cool. I'm assuming this is a first for you, Sprinks, or have you seen this one before?
In its entirety, this is the first time I've seen it. I have seen the graveyard scene before in some kind of compilation of like scenes of Christmas carols. So I've seen that one scene. Everything else was the first time for me.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think I've seen. I think I've seen some stuff from Future in this as well, and probably the grave scene too, ironically. So, yeah, short histories for this one. So, genuinely a first round for all of us, outside of the singular scenes that we might have spotted. But it wasn't exactly spoilers for us since we know where this story goes.
What?
True, but this film version is very different than other forms in spots.
That is true. I suppose we'll cover them when we get there, won't we?
Mhm.
And I guess with that, gentlemen, we shall dive right into the first act, which will be pretty much from the beginning to when his partner Marley leaves his house.
So when he sits down and flies out the
Fades away
window.
through the
Yeah,
window.
when he flies out the window, pretty much right after that is where we're cutting the first act. Why don't you start us out, Crimson?
All right. I'm going to jump to probably my favorite shot in the movie, and that's Scrooge walking through the fog on his way to his house.
In the alleyway, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a great shot. It was a little peculiar that he wasn't using his walking stick, but that's fine. He had it
Sure.
on me, just wasn't using it, which is possible. It's whatever. But
I think he
Very
only uses it like maybe one or two scenes the whole movie.
he holds it. He doesn't really lean on it or anything. He doesn't walk with it. He just holds it. But yeah, very good shot. Good contrast with the white of the fog and the heavy shadows they have there. Very nice.
Him walking through the alleyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. and
Before
that-
the horse comes up behind him and he hears the first like voice of Marley.
It's funny. I actually wrote down. I think that might be my favorite shot of the film as well. It was I guess I just like how imposing he is in the shot. I guess.
It kind of somewhat makes him look like the ghost of um, Yet to Come in the look. Somewhat just like the whole black silhouette, far off look.
Yeah, I can agree
Silhouette
with
in the
that.
fog.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Mhm.
Very very fitting, I guess.
Yeah.
For that.
Also, from the angle of the road, that camera's on the ground.
Pretty darn low.
Probably. I think kind of to add more onto that, one of the interesting things that I noticed about that, the scene, like just happens pretty much right after that shot, is the when he hears his name and he looks towards the horse cart. Um, the the horse cart is entirely painted white.
I didn't pick up on that.
Interesting. Is that to be like a ghostly presence, or is that to just like really offset the look of everything dark around?
I think
Probably both.
it's that, and but here's the thing: the person who's driving it's also all white, and so is the horse. So I took it as like the old saying like the death comes in a pale horse kind of aspect.
Oh,
So I took that as the foreboding just before because the carriage disappears and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
the ideal that the bell is tolling for him, and obviously we learn why because his judgment is here for that night, pretty much. Um, but even looking at the scene, because I actually, or at least I tried to kind of zoom in on the carriage rider, they're also all painted white. Like you can't really see like their skin color or anything. So he looks like Marley.
oh,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
So I took it very much in the sense of like it's in very much intentionally a ghostly presence, like it's supposed to be death coming or whatever. And this is how I took it symbolically. Otherwise I do think it is meant to help contrast everything around it, but also it happens to fit like a few symbol things.
Sprinks, you didn't pick up on that he was painted white or that it was like a ghost carriage?
That it was a ghost carriage.
Okay. Wanted to define what you meant by that.
Yeah, my eye was more focused on Scrooge's curiosity of who's calling him more so than the carriage driver going past.
Yeah, I only noticed because
Yeah,
it happened to pause at the right time.
I thought it was ghost carriage because it fades away in the fog. It doesn't trail off through the fog.
Oh yeah, it
Faded.
just straight up disappears, which is obviously I took that as confirmation of what
Yeah.
I guess the setup for what they were going with there was. Because it was just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, everything could be white just because of the snow, but then there's parts where the snow were not touching on the wheels and it was still white, which is kind of why I took it that very ghostly death direction, I guess.
Okay.
Spriggs, why don't you hop us around to somewhere else in this act?
Sure. Actually, the very beginning is the procession with the funeral wagon. Is that Jacob Marley?
Oh, and he says Marley is as dead as a doornail.
Yes. Did you two take that to be Jacob Marley?
No.
No, I don't think so. I understand why people would though, because if that's true, it just throws a lot of the history timing off.
Yes. That's why it confused me because I did take it to be Jacob Marley because that's what the words are being said to as from the visual. So like that's the connection. And I went, interesting. And then it cuts to a different camera shot and gives the title, but then it's modern day. So I'm like, you just jumped 7 years. So it's a smooth transition, but it's a very, very confusing for someone who doesn't know the difference of when Marley passed to the presence of the beginning of the story.
I mean, I think that you still get the context for it later on, but I agree. It's a little oddly shot. I never took it as Marley though, so because from what I remember at the beginning, it's you kind of just you get Marley as dead as a doornail, and then it just transitions to the outside of Scrooge's house as we come down from the overhead shot as we get the title.
Oh. I mean, I saw it as like you're looking at the coffin and it says Marley's dead.
I mean, it didn't heavily focus on the coffin, from what I remember.
It's not.
I took that whole beginning scene, especially with the eerie music being played, that it was a procession of someone's death.
I didn't get that. So I'd have to re-see it.
Okay, could be or could not be,
Yeah,
because there is no title thing of like 7 years later. So
yeah. Ambiguous. We'll just put a check mark in, and we'll hopefully catch it on a rewatch, I guess. I found it interesting. I mean, it's you find it out later, but I like that Scrooge's nephew is the narrator.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's fine.
I'll explain why I like it later when we get to a particular scene. But I think because I didn't know who it was. I thought that I just wrote down as the narrator or character is pretty much what I put question marks on, and obviously it's the nephew who's doing the narration. So
True, and it's very bookend. It's only at the very beginning and only at the very end.
yes, and I actually do think the narrator makes something better, but we'll talk about it when we get there.
Interesting.
Crimson. Why don't you go again?
All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of comparing to our previous film, Scrooge.
What?
Where?
No. Okay, of
I
course
know.
you can do that.
Crazy. Because there's some parallels. Who would have guessed? And some differences. One being how I felt Scrooge was around Bob. I felt in Scrooge they had a harsher relationship. Here, I didn't really feel like Bob wasn't built up as this super innocent, like the kindest man you'll ever meet. He's a fine guy, but he's not like the kindest guy in the world. He doesn't irradiate happiness. So the contrast of the world's happiest man with Scrooge wasn't here. It was just kind of like Scrooge berating a normal dude, which works, but it personally didn't have the impact that the previous film had with their connections.
I guess that's gonna kind of open up into one of the more broader topics about this particular adaptation. Is I feel like all the characters are a little bit different. Like they're tweaked to be more. This is gonna sound really weird. Realistic, because I don't mean realistic in the traditional sense of the word here. I mean it more. They're more grounded, is what they come across to as. Because let's be honest, Scrooge is almost cartoonishly like villainous. Whereas here it was a little more of a grounded antagonist, I guess would be. He's they still have an antagonistic relationship, but it's nowhere near as like, as you say, berating.
Yeah.
Springs, I'm assuming you'd like to.
Crimson, I agree with you of what you're saying, and this might be a little bit of a hot take out of me. I don't like this Bob Cratchit at all.
He left like
He is
no
so
impact on me.
mundane. His acting range of emotions is like a minute towards joy and sorrow in this film.
I agree. It's not a hot take for me. There was no like scene where like, oh, I really feel for Bob or anything. Like in the Scrooge one, we have the scene where he's tearing up about Tim before he enters in the bedroom. And just like I said, the dichotomy between him and Scrooge, him being the super happy man and then the super grouchy man. There is no polarization here. As Ryder said, they're a bit more grounded, which I think does lessen Bob because he's supposed to feel a bit like a contrast to Scrooge. And I didn't really get that contrast here.
It's just Scrooge kind of just talking down to a normal dude.
I'm still thinking about it because I also in agreement that it's a different portrayal of Bob. I don't know if it worsens it for me. I might be neutral on it, so I'm not. I don't view it as a hot take, I guess, but I'm neutral on it because I can see like the benefits as to why they chose to go this direction. Um,
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. It's not like, oh, this is not at all like any other adaptation. It's just, it's so dull. Like the whole present scene, sorry, we're not there, but the whole watching Bob's family part, just, I don't know, just mundane, dim.
um,
Yeah, I mean, if
I
this
don't
was
know if
my
I don't know if
first
I would
Christmas,
go. I don't know if I would go dim, but I would agree it's mundane.
like, if this was my first Christmas Carol, I probably wouldn't pick at it as being much of an issue. But seeing a bunch of different iterations and seeing how well their contrast is really pops out how mundane this Bob
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And actually, it's in this first act. They do something that's changed from adaptations I've seen, where Tiny Tim comes to get him at work.
I did like that addition actually.
I like the talk that Bob and Tim have, like on their way home, but which that talk stops Bob from interacting with the kids and being giddy on his way home for Christmas Eve, which is more in line of this character of Bob in this film. But I also don't like how Tiny Tim is so weak that he's unaccompanied all the way from home to Scrooge and Marley's office to wait for his father out in the cold. It just seems more of a reason that he's going to pass away.
You kind of lost me on that last point. What's the complaint about Tim? That no one cared that he went by himself, or what?
Why didn't Tim go inside? He's standing out in the cold waiting for his dad. Why'd he get there so early?
Well, he probably didn't know how long it was going to take him.
He's going to freeze to death.
Perhaps. I mean, I'm sure if he actually felt like he was going to drop dead from the cold, he would have knocked on the door or something. No, I didn't have too much of an issue with it because no one else had an issue in the film with it. His mom didn't freak out like, I can't believe you did that. You had me worried. Or
No, you just get Bob going over and
wasn't
it's like,
"I
you're
can't believe
cold.
you've done
And he goes,
this."
I'm fine, father. And they picks him up.
Yeah. So because the characters don't have issue with it, I don't, because it must not be that peculiar to them. Tim's probably done it before, or they trust him enough to do it. So
yeah, I guess it's enough in-universe explanation to not make it a problem. Though I understand why we as like would be meta concerned, because obviously if our children weren't like Tiny Tim, we would not let them do that because we'd be more concerned, I guess. So it fits within the universe, but I understand I guess the feelings towards it. Yeah. I'm gonna be wrestling with the Bob stuff for a bit because I've been wrestling with it since we saw it because I do agree watching all these in sequence is really gonna contrast the differences between them, all the different characters.
It's just the situations Bob gets put in of the Christmas dinner, Tim passing, the raise he gets, I wouldn't say it's bad acting. It's just the direction
Very
I get. Maybe
subtle.
bad directing. The direction of what this Bob is to feel or to portray is subtle.
Yeah. So the thing I want to draw the dividing line is I actually really do like the way this Bob is portrayed. I just don't know if would subjectively be my favorite Bob. Does that make sense?
I suppose this adaptation fits in this world of who this Bob is, but comparatively, not great.
Yeah, comparatively, I understand why he wouldn't be anybody's favorites. Like I think actually, all right, this is gonna be kind of spoilers. Just what I think of this Bob. I do actually think this Bob is very objectively well done. I do think the writer's intention, and I like going based off of this. I think the writer's intention is not necessarily to contrast Scrooge directly with their clashing personalities, but rather to make Bob the everyday normal Joe working class man. That was their goal from the beginning. So he's the what we've been saying, like mundane. It's subtle. It's not over the top. They're very grounded characters. I do think they achieve that very well with this Bob. I do think this Bob is mundane, and he does fill that role and niche of he's just the regular dude trying to get through his day, keeps food on his family for his table and stuff like that. Food. Yeah, I think I said that right. So I do think that aspect of what this Bob is supposed to be is all extremely well done. However, I'm in agreement with both of you. I still think that because of how we're going to be watching all these sequences, all these movies in sequence, he does come off as lesser because he lacks the almost cartoonish excitement that we've just come off of with Scrooge.
Yes, and I think the opposite that's being said of most tales of Bob and Scrooge, I think Fred takes that role in this film of being the opposite.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree with that as well. And it fits for this version of Fred too, because they comparatively to this one and the previous one, obviously Fred is far more expanded upon as a character because of Scrooge's relationship with his sister. So like if the film didn't expand on Scrooge's relationship with his sister, and therefore the continuation / extension of that into Bob's nephew, that would probably be a poorer choice to make in terms of like building your characters for the film.
Possibly. Yeah, this Fred is very inviting a lot, but he's not a giddy, smiling ear to ear Fred.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about it is that, well, I guess we can, how do we all feel about jumping to the scene with Fred, since we're kind of already talking about him?
It's in this act, it's fine.
Yeah, his introduction.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that scene. I think Fred, again, like everybody else, he comes across as a very grounded person. So he's a character that has he comes across as just a good person trying to connect with his uncle. So it comes across like he comes by and wishes his uncle Merry Christmas and invites him to dinner every, it comes across he does that every Christmas and comes by to stop and see him because he loves him because of how much his sister loved him too,
Mm-hmm.
But what I really like about the dynamic they set up for here is that his nephew comes across as sullen once Scrooge starts like talking cruelly down towards like the poor, towards his feelings about Christmas and stuff like that. And then it kind of he bounces back, once he understands like what his dynamic is going to be, he bounces back. He's like, all right, then I'm going to keep my humor because someone needs to lighten it, that sort of way. I actually do like their back and forth over that. And that's me getting long-winded, so who wants to go next?
Okay, I can go next. And I also agree with your sentiment with Fred the nephew there. I will go... Where do I want to go?
Well,
I'll go with...
You don't add
somewhere in this
more
act.
with the nephew?
Yeah.
More with Fred?
Yeah.
That's what you're inviting, more with the nephew. Okay. Yeah, I think Fred's introduction was good. I'm going to be doing this whole podcast comparing it to Scrooge. So if you haven't seen it on its member, check out Scrooge. Yeah. So you understand what our comparisons are.
It's going to be a very interconnected season. We're going to be doing this a lot.
Because this Fred, I enjoyed more than the previous Fred Scrooge. He felt more interesting, more layered. And that just, maybe it's because I have a connection with the actor who played him, but I do feel like his joy for Christmas, his stubbornness in a fashion of trying to break through to Scrooge came through here and during the two other scenes he's in. Right, it's just the beginning, the ending, and the present bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless, well, Like, I don't think the
Or the
narration
narrator.
count.
Yeah.
No.
Narrator doesn't
The
count.
actor did the narration. I don't know if Fred did the
And
narration.
I think it's the same. It's Roger Reese who's doing it, but I think he's playing a different character.
Yeah, because Fred wouldn't know all this stuff, right?
Well, unless he's telling the story like retroactively, like he's telling it as in like the idea is he's framing it as a story he's telling to someone else, like by a bedside.
I get what you
it's
mean.
hard to
I wouldn't
say.
take it
I
like
don't-
that.
Yeah.
I took it as he's using the word. He is like the Charles Dickens narration part.
Yeah, like I said, it could be read either way. I think there's enough leeway for that, but I'm totally fine with you guys reading it that way because there's not really much changes. I think the only other direct mention of him is during a future scene, when they're revisiting the Cratchits. He is directly mentioned there, I think. So he has some involvement that's
Yes.
not on screen.
Yes.
Yeah, not on screen. And I do like how his introduction does have something to do with Bob clapping with his speech. So it's not just mentioned later that he knows Bob. We get to see him around Bob. So it's little, it's small, but it's there. Help support it.
I like that they have a polite exchange after his exchange with Scrooge as well.
Yeah. He asked about how his family's doing. And Bob said they're doing fine. It's Bob the optimist. But not the super optimist in this one.
No. Not in this version.
All right, now, unless would you like to have add your thoughts about Scrooge's nephew, Sprinks? Any more that's already already been said?
No. The two of you have shared quite much on Fred. I just again he fits in this world, and as Crimson said, very layered, like a lot, especially with the bringing up of his mom and the relationship that Scrooge had with his sister, and really gives more to nephew Fred than ignored in other iterations of that. So yeah, it definitely gives a more emotional stake of family for Christmas connection to Scrooge.
Yeah.
But it works in this version of the story they're telling in this world of him not being a grinning fool of like Christmas spirit 100%. Just being inviting and then wishing a Merry Christmas and leaving.
Yeah. And then bouncing back when he can't break to the Scrooge.
Yeah. It also helps for the present scene, the depiction of this character. More on that later, but
yeah, fair enough. I agree. This is going to come up a lot in the podcast. It must be said now. I think there's a lot of subtle changes to the characters that get across the particular pontifications and eccentricities of each like different character to kind of help separate them from their previous iterations, which I guess helps me, in a way, look at this a little bit more objectively than I normally might be able to, because they're able to distinguish the characters. They give you enough to be able to distinguish the differences between all the various versions of the characters. So I do enjoy that.
See, I'd agree with you, but not when you say subtle. To me, it's pretty present, the changes.
No. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Their acting is subtle, but I think the changes are overtly apparent. Does that make better sense to you?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Because like Scrooge is still cruel, because you don't really, when he's talking about boiling people in their own pudding in this one, he's actually laughing at it, which is not something he does in the previous version. So you get a different sort of cruelty from this Scrooge.
Yeah, he's much more grinning of the thought of misfortune, other than the other iterations where it's screaming at anger.
Yeah. Which for me, I take that as a character change to a degree, but we'll get that as we go along. Crimson, you were going to jump somewhere. Do you remember?
I was. Yeah, the exchange, I guess, for the corn, which I didn't really understand, and I rewatched it because I was like, what's going on here? Because I thought at this point it was the donation stuff, and obviously I didn't watch all the way through till it showed that part. I'm like, oh well, I rewound for nothing. But yeah, the buying up corn and then having a 5% interest on it and wanting it returned and storing it in a warehouse and blah blah blah, all that stuff really shows how greedy he is, how much he doesn't really care about people, stuff we already kind of get of him.
Yes.
And it really makes me wonder if it's 100% necessary in this.
I was going to ask, is it needed?
Yeah, because it kind of just reiterates the traits we already know of him. It's nice to see that he is multifaceted in his business, but I don't know if it's really necessarily required to know that about him.
Because of what we get later with you know, one of the reasons his relationship fell apart is because he's so focused on being multifaceted with his business. I do think this is kind of set up in a way for that. So I don't necessarily think it's needed, but I'm neutral again on it. I understand why it's here. I think it does good enough to kind of reinforce not only the traits that we know, but it shows him being like a businessman / merchant.
Yeah, and it kind of, I guess, adds character to the people later that are mocking the man that died, because at least in the Scrooge version, it's just a bunch of generic guys. Here, we actually have them established as people that Scrooge knows.
Yeah.
Yes, I suppose this replaces the bit of a debtor coming in to his office to show his business practice.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, the donation people show up to his office, right? Like, is that what you mean by debtors, or am I thinking of something else?
No. Like, in Scrooge, it was the man was his wife, and Scrooge was like, "You got a week."
Yeah.
And in the past flashback ghost thing.
Yeah.
But in this one, there is no debtor who comes or, is running out of time or anything of that of what is owed to Scrooge. Instead, this goes to the exchange.
Yes.
That's a good thing to bring up, actually. Yeah. We don't see anything of his main business referenced visually or anything. Just this corn thing. So I guess that does make it a bit more necessary.
Yeah. Because presumably this is his business without anything else to go off of.
Well,
I suppose so, but
he deals in loans, which he mentions that he started with his father's money and then building it up from there. So
yeah,
we know he still does the loan stuff.
There's enough information with his talk with Bob Cratchit, and then the charity workers, and then I guess later with the interaction of Fezziwig and his father. So I thought there was plenty enough, but
I think it can be removed, but it does add stuff. It's not completely useless.
Yeah, like I said, that's kind of the reason I'm neutral on it. Like, I can understand if we had like an hour and a half mandate, I wouldn't mind removing this scene. But it also adds plenty to the story, so I'm contented leaving it in with the version that we've got, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then obviously this goes right into the debtors scene. How do we feel about the debtors scene? Not the debtors scene.
Oh,
sorry.
Michael Go, may he rest in peace.
Yeah, sorry, not the debtors. The donation.
Charity people.
Yeah.
I don't know, pretty accurate. I mean, just accuracy of like other iterations of asking for anonymous, which I think is it's different later on in the last act we have here of kind of a setup and payoff of not wanting to be anonymous. It's a accurate line used here for like a secondary payoff later, which I think is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think they do too much differently with this than the other iterations that I've seen. So it does its job.
I mean,
it's got the proper payoff of them being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it!" later.
That's true. Springs, why don't you jump somewhere?
Sure. In our coverage of Scrooge, I had a big thing about the candle being lit and the spotlight because of the set and the time of the 30s of when that was
You're
filmed.
going to bring this up.
This iteration, he lights a candle that does jack all. Doesn't light anything.
So it's accurate, I
Yeah.
guess.
I
Well, he's going to
suppose
say
so,
the
but
house
there's
is
so
too
much.
lit.
It's too lit. There's so much window of lighting that it's not needed.
I'm going to imagine that's book accurate. He enters the home, lights a candle, and heads to his room.
Yes,
I would
he does
imagine that's in the book.
light a candle.
Considering this is supposed to be in the
Yeah.
1800s, right? Yeah, most things are still candle lit fires back then. Though
Oh no, that's fine. I just mean the moonlight's in. Like all the windows are open.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying this as a negative or just an observation, comparing it to?
It's an observation of the usage of the set lighting to have such moonlight needed to illuminate Scrooge in the scene of him lighting the candle and going upstairs, rather than covering some of that so the candlelight actually is the reflective light used.
The problem
'Cause
with
it's more so it's like-
candlelight is it's not bright. So if they did that, it wouldn't look great. Anyways, at
I
least the
think
way
that
they
would've
shot
been
it, they'd have to do
more-
like close-ups or something. To make
Yeah,
it.
but that would have given more, I think, to me, an eeriness of the unknown of Scrooge and his house after hearing and seeing a vision of Marley on his door knocker. Just more of a creep feel. But he
I mean,
kind of
that goes
enters
for
a house that he can
intentions.
see everything.
I don't know if they were going for an entire creep factor of him walking to his room. I didn't really get those vibes that that's what they were going for.
I just took it as an uneasy, especially with the music being used. I think the music was really good to help the uneasiness of him in his home, not feeling 100% safe, because the instruments kept jumping from a different instrument to a different instrument.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's definitely more of a sinister question if he was present, of if they were on key or not, or if they were tuned right, because it just sounded kind of like a mess a bit.
Definitely, the instruments are telling you what you're supposed to feel as an audience member, which is fine. I'm fine with music doing that, obviously, but very overt. And you're supposed to feel tense while he searches his house.
Yeah.
I like the focus of his locks, his triple locks on his door.
And the way
Really,
he double checks it with Marley, too.
Yeah, it must have been in the food. Something
There's
I
more
ate.
gravy
Must have
than
been something I
grave of
ate.
you.
Yeah, what a line.
Yeah,
It's a great line.
Yeah.
And that's in the book. It's great.
I will jump to Bob comforting Tim when they're watching the other kids slide around. At this point, I had obviously reached the conclusion that it would be out of character to see Bob jump in and slide around with the kids, as much as I would have still enjoyed seeing it. But that's obviously not the focus of the scene. I like that Bob is encouraging to Tim, whether he personally believes it or not, that Tim will one day be like there skating with the rest of the kids.
Yeah, he's not a Debbie Downer. No, he's optimistic in that regards.
Yeah.
I was
He's
going to
just
say
not energetic.
Yeah, he's more of a hopeful person than an optimistic one.
Yeah. Which, again, if you're going with grounded characters, I do think that's the way to go. But like I said, I do miss the fact that he's not going out there and skating himself with the kids. But again, the importance of the scene for me is just, I really like it when mentor / parental figure characters lie to their kids, whether they believe the lie or not. You know, so obviously he's hopeful that his son will make it. So you can take it however you want. But I took it as like, you know, this Bob is very grounded. I think he understands like how at risk Tim is with their life and stuff like that, and how like you know, how they could potentially lose him one day. So especially with the whole like he's getting stronger every day talk that he has with his wife later on. I do very much enjoy the encouragement he gives to Tim here. You know, he's putting on the brave face even for his son.
Yes, if Tim wasn't present do you think this Bob would have enjoyed some fun?
No, not this Bob.
It's hard to
I
say.
think he would have just carried on.
It's hard to say. I think he would have if it was subtle fun. Like, you know, if a kid like slid across in front of him and like nearly bumped into him, I think he would get a good chuckle out of that. I don't think he would be able. I don't think he's one to just jump in and slide with the kids though.
Okay, that I think that's where I'm settled on this Bob too. My answer would be I think he would like
Look and smirk.
laugh along, maybe like clap and say like good show or something at the kids because he's going home for Christmas Eve. I don't think it would be to the level of the Bob Cratchit and Scrooge of actually joining in and slipping.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of this scene right here. I think really highlights the difference between the two Bobs for me. So, yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Crimson, you go next.
All right, we'll go with Marley, the ghost. And we get a lot more screen time with him in this version than with Scrooge.
Yeah, well, that's because we can
And-
actually
well,
see him.
What screen time? Yeah, what screen time does he have in Scrooge?
He's there, we just can't see him. In this, we definitely see him. And I actually prefer the version we don't see him, but that's a personal thing. We get a bit more that he's kind of told to do this for Scrooge in some manner. In the previous Scrooge one, he felt more like a free agent. But here it seemed like he was more sent and was happy to be sent to help his friend. Which I think does fix a little bit of what I had a problem with in Scrooge. Because he said part of his penance was to warn Scrooge. So that's why I'm leaning he's a bit more directed to helping Scrooge. It's part of his penance to warn him. Which I think betters his motives and stuff other than he's just his friend.
Yeah, I'm in kind of agreement with that. I think one of my favorite dynamics to come out of this scene was Marley straight up asking like, "What would you like me to do in order to convince you I'm real?" And I'm like, "Cool. That's like one thing nobody fucking asks of like ghosts and stuff like that in film." They cover that like immediately, which I appreciated.
Yeah, why doubt your senses? Something I didn't like about this Marley is that he makes his presence known before the servant bell rang by appearing 3 faces of him on the mural of the Last Supper.
Yeah,
He showed himself on the knocker too.
Well, that's accurate of like book accuracy of showing up on the knocker as a vision beforehand, but his presence is known as to Scrooge by the servant bell first. So I think if it was just edited and flipped, I would have preferred that much better.
With the way it's edited, it kind of feels like he hasn't fully manifested yet to kind of like get into Scrooge's room, because like that's why he keeps appearing and disappearing. But
but it kind of feels like trickery.
Yeah,
like he's toying with him.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other read that you would get from it, is that it comes across as trickery and toying with him, which is not something I think they intend. They're just having fun with visuals. But
yeah,
that's the kind
of. I mean, the whole conversation does not feel like this Marley is a trickster.
Yeah.
No, he's not a trickster.
No, he's not. So
he's quite over the top, though. Give him that.
That is true. Though I do like that he gets over the top to kind of get a point across to Scrooge when Scrooge starts to backtalk him a little bit.
Oh yeah, he pretty much yells at him, and then Scrooge is like, "I believe you."
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to get wasted right then and there. Yeah, I'm in agreement, Springs. I think I could do without the ones in the fire, like above the fireplace. I could do without those appearances.
Yeah.
It would, I guess.
Especially I think it gives a good enough eeriness feel of the servant bell without seeing a visual of him, and then the footsteps up the stairs without seeing him.
Yeah, and then the locks opening, and then him at last appearing through the door. It was a good
Yeah.
build up without that. So it kind of
Yeah, but the mural gives more of like that's his introduction. Kind of really feels like stealing the hook of him coming through the door.
yeah. I think I can chop it down as a bit of a pacing issue. I think is what I would do with that. Because
Okay.
it screws up. It screws with the pacing of the build up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just
Mhm.
think that one shot, just remove it.
I agree. What do I think about the delivery of the first humbug?
It's
Bah
fine.
Yeah, because he's not.
Is it
It's
humbug
not-
ba? He says for like
The first
not
one was Bah
Bah
Humbug, I think.
it is ba. Okay.
Yeah, he's because
Yeah,
this
that's
one,
right.
this Scrooge obviously isn't growling it out.
No, it's not super emphasized in this. It's kind of just like
No.
a word he says.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This Scrooge is comes across as not angry about Christmas or against it. He's just tired of it.
Can agree.
I would agree with that if not for him laughing at boiling people and their fucking pudding over it. So he's still cruel towards it, but it's just, you know,
Yeah, but that wasn't of anger. Him not yelling at it. That's him laughing at it and amusing himself with it.
yeah. Okay, okay. With you explaining that part, I agree. Yes, this Scrooge is a little more less angry, hateful, more like amused, hateful.
He's just exhausted of the expense, loss, and the merriment of men and all the things of it.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess, Springs, it is your turn to jump around if you'd want.
Oh, sweet. This version has so many corner carolers. Like this England is packed full of musicians.
They need their money.
I guess so, but there's just so many. I don't think. Is there any that we see in the entirety of the film that are repeated? Are they all different, like bands and carolers?
I think the one
Well,
in the
I think-
square is repeated near the exchange. I think that one's repeated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
The
so
one,
the
one he
carol-
gave money at the end was the
The same at the
second
beginning.
ones,
the
I
exchange?
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first one's the one he walks through, and then there's the second one we see that he walks around. I think that's them.
So the big group outside of the exchange, I think, is the one that's repeated.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot.
It's
Yeah.
true.
And unlike Scrooge, this doesn't seem like very like kids on the street are very poor kind of thing, not like a real disheveled looking England. This is very merriment and upbeat kind of look,
There's
which is a little off putting for the realism approach of the characters.
kind of, yeah. I think it also. This is gonna be weird. This is kind of a broader topic. You get a very distinct sense of the world in Scrooge, with us constantly cutting away between scenes, like to see how the rest of the city is celebrating the holiday, all the way to people who are out fishing. You know how they are, celebrating
yeah.
the holiday and their merriment because they're still having fun. They're just doing their job while they work on the day.
Yeah, the whole mayor queen banquet thing.
Yeah.
You don't in that sense. I don't think Lenton's much of a character in this film as a result, comparatively to Scrooge. Because
I agree.
Because in
Definitely.
Scrooge, you get Lenton almost as its own character and how the city is alive in of itself with the holiday. Where here you get the carolers and that's
You
pretty
get the
much
people
it. Yeah,
of the town. You don't get the town itself.
yeah.
I mean, you kind of just get a street. We don't even really get like an overarching look of how big this place is.
Yeah, like the tunnel where the homeless people are. We don't really know where that is in relation to
No,
the town.
he hasn't visited before.
And I don't think we see the skaters as well. The skaters, we don't see how they are in relation to everything else. When Bob and Tim are kind of waiting, we just know it's on the way home for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not too far away.
Yeah. So we get some windows into what the city's like, but nowhere near the amount of the previous iteration of the film.
Yeah, I didn't
Nothing
see
that
anybody eating
distinguishes
any
it.
turtles in this one.
Yeah.
But to your point, Sprinks, about like how I guess I guess it was just the way you phrased it. I guess that might have confused me. So you said that because not it's not downtrodden, it's interesting to how it plays off the more realism aspect of the characters, the grounded character aspect.
Yeah, it seems to be more of the fitted characters of the world of what we see versus the world of like the extras and everything around.
Oh,
Seems very like it seems maybe that's the Bob character of Christmas Joy to off-put Scrooge is the people around him that are very merry. Maybe that's why there's so many carolers and music and good tidings and everything to off-put the Scrooge character.
Oh, I see.
And
I think I sort of understand what you mean now. So, like, the idea of that we're seeing the world only through our character's eyes, but there's still enough in that what we see to kind of offset Scrooge's feelings a little bit, or Scrooge's presence.
Yeah, it just seems like there's an overabundance that is shown from following Scrooge and around England.
it's an interesting point of view to look at it, because the way I was looking at it is that what we see early on of the town isn't disheveled. There's a bunch of poor people everywhere. There's carolers. Was to kind of build up the contrast of the reveal from present of the homelessness, because then it's a big hit to Scrooge later. But if he sees that every day walking out around the neighborhood, it's not going to be this big reveal later. Uh, so I think it's to better the shock of the homeless stuff
Yeah,
later in the movie,
yeah. Scrooge's,
Interesting.
because that's something that he didn't do in Scrooge. In Scrooge,
No,
there was
not
no. So you look at the poor people after this.
no. I
The
don't
hit
know many
was Tim.
versions that show that.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I think
Okay, that scene. I don't want to. I don't want to jump ahead, but I disagree. I think with what you mean.
And I guess we'll talk about that disagreement when we get there. For I guess what I would add to the discussion without really spoiling what's going on, one of the key differences about this Scrooge is he is willfully ignorant. Like, he's choosing not to bother with the even knowledge of what the poor situation is like. So another way you could look at the way we see the world is that we see it through his eyes, which is without all the poor people and stuff like that, because this is how he sees the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, his taxes are good enough
Yeah.
of an excuse of the connection he has with the knowledge of it.
Yeah, so he even if he saw it, he wouldn't really know what he was looking for. I mean, he confuses Timmy as for a beggar.
That's true.
So you definitely get a sense of like he does not see that side of London at all.
No, I don't think. I mean, it's Scrooge. I don't think he goes anywhere besides the office and home.
It's probably true.
or the exchange.
Or the exchange, yeah.
Do you think? Ooh, that's a great question. I don't think we brought it up in Scrooge. Do you think Scrooge would know how to get to Fred's house if he wasn't shown by a ghost?
I mean, if he had the address, I'm sure he could, but he didn't know.
That
Oh,
depends.
I see what you mean. You said Fred. I took that as Bob. I don't know. If that was like the sister's house, maybe we don't know if that's Fred's house or if it was his mom's and then he inherited it, or what that house is. I don't know.
I guess that is true.
I'm running thin on Act 1 here, fellas. How about you?
I have one more thing, which is timestamp 24:53. Marley talking to Scrooge when he like stands up, kind of to go towards the window, and he's talking about like how each ghost will like pull at bell 1 and 2 and what so forth. That part, Marley teleports because the cut of Scrooge is now looking in a new direction of where Marley is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I
he jumps in
understand, yeah.
movement.
Speaking of movement, let's talk about the special effects of Marley vacating the premises.
Do we have to? Yeah, it was bad, but it was funny. I think I laughed at
I
it.
don't even know what they were trying to do. It wasn't like he was climbing out the window. He like sat and then shrunk out the
I
window. I
I
don't know what
think
that
they
was.
didn't. I think they didn't want him to stand and go out the window because then it's like he phased through something. Being that his presence is he walked through the door, the open door, so it's like depicting he can't go through objects. So the green screen look of him sitting, I think, was the best they could find of him like kind of ducking out the window to fit.
Yeah, with the way he was sitting, I actually half expected him to just kind of like backwards, sort of fall out the window, and then he just
Yeah,
starts
that's what I
shrinking
thought
and
was going to
fading.
happen.
Not the best special effect in this film.
No, I think it
No,
was
not
simply done just so he
realized.
can't phase through things.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's probably why it's there. I just wish that
It looked better.
it looks better.
I don't know why he couldn't just climb out the window.
Especially roughly what 45 years since the last one we've covered. But then again, that one wasn't even around. That didn't have a Jacob Marley physical look.
Yeah,
For the audience. But he still went out the window in the Scrooge one
He did.
as well. So yeah, if he just jumped out the window here without phasing through the window or anything, I think that would still work without this goofy effect.
yeah. I this is one of those things that just pulled me out of the movie. Like it's one of those things where I just like, oh yeah, I'm watching a movie kind of thing. Like you just forget what you're. Because sometimes it was an immersion breaking thing for me. I guess is the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, it made me not audibly laugh or anything, but I found amusement from it when obviously there wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, same. I feel the same. It was funny, but not for the reason that the writers wanted or the filmmakers wanted.
I guess also on the effects of Marley when he is on the door knocker, I wish that was more solidified look of his face than transparent.
I think it would look even more goofy if it was solid, though.
I don't know. I can still see like the lion's eyes of the door knocker like coming through.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it does play off more of like Scrooge unsure, really, if it was Marley, but I feel like it's very distinct in the book and everything that he does see that as Jacob Marley as his door knocker. This one seems more confusion.
I mean, even in Scrooge, it was transparent. It wasn't a solid head. No, I think the solid head would just look goofy because with a visual effects point of view, it would just look like they cut his head off and put it on the door knocker. It wouldn't look right. It wouldn't look ghostly.
Possibly.
It would look very goofy. So I think the faded look is for their benefit. I think the solid would be to their detriment.
Okay, I guess then I just wish maybe not 100% solid, but the what's the word?
Translucency.
I would say hypocrisy, but that's definitely not it. What do you say,
The
Crimson?
translucency.
Yeah, I guess translucency of it being more of like a 90, 85% ish than what kind of looks like a 40%.
Yeah.
Let's see what else.
I agree with that.
There was a sound effect thing that I executed very well with Marley, and that's the chain sounds. A lot of it sounded like he was in the room when the chains were happening, when it should be outside the room. There was no like muffled sound added to the sound effects. It was like the chains were in the room.
Yep.
So that was off for the audio.
Yeah. I would also say you hear the chain sound effects when he's not moving.
Yeah.
Like the chains aren't rattling or moving at all.
They overplay that sound effect so much, and it actually, I'm very sensitive to hearing, so it was very grating for me to hear the constant chain sound effects. Like it was a little too much, because as you say, the chain sound effects were playing like he was just sitting on the.
Yeah, I think the most valid part was when he's like wailing, and he's like shaking. Then.
Yeah.
I did like his design, though. I haven't really touched on that. The design of Marley is pretty good. And I like the chin strap. It kind of was kind of goofy when he reapplied it at the end there, but
Oh,
I like the idea of it
I found it goofy when he undid it and his jaw just hung down.
hung there. Yeah, that was also goofy.
Like it was holding up
And
his jaw because he's decaying or something.
Yeah, but right
yeah.
after he can talk normally.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that's it for Act 1, I think.
All
Ditto.
right. I think my last bit is I do like the way Marley portrays like how broken he is when he's trying to warn Scrooge. Like he's talking about how his spirit never walked beyond their counting house and stuff like that. And I like that he is kind of you can tell that his experiences as a ghost have kind of broken him a little bit. So I appreciated, I guess, the actor portraying that.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess one last thing, which I think I had an issue with in Scrooge.
Ooh, what a liar.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty much in any Christmas Carol is the why now type deal. Why is this happening to Scrooge now instead of 7 years ago when Marley died or a year after that? Why is it 7 years later when this is all happening to him? Because there's nothing really new in his life now that would spark this.
Funny enough, I still have a fan theory about that, but it's an overarching Christmas Carol thing, so I might bring it up in the recap for this season.
Do you think it's possibly because the following Christmas would be his death?
We don't have a timeline on there.
We don't.
We don't know.
That
So I can't say
is
that.
pretty much my fan theory, so I guess it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, my fan theory. So it doesn't matter more. The idea of it being now is because they think he was supposed to die that night.
Oh,
Well,
that
that's
night.
a little different.
Yeah, he's supposed to die that night, more or less. Or sometime on Christmas Day. Like he was supposed to die either that night or the night after. Pretty much, he was supposed to die really, really soon. But because he changed so drastically, he was given "quote unquote" more time. That's been a large portion of my fan theory takeaway whenever I watch a Christmas Carol story.
This is his life flashing before his eyes moment.
Yes,
In
kind of.
this.
He got food poisoned by a dop of mustard.
I mean, it's a fine theory. It's not really substantial.
Oh yeah, it's a theory, but the only evidence for it is circumstantial, pretty much.
I mean, if they had like a date on the tombstone and a date of when the movie takes place, that would confirm it. But they don't do
I
that.
don't think they.
I think there's some versions that do, where they show the date on the tombstone before the name.
Yeah, that might be why I apply it to every version. But who knows? Maybe one of the versions we're covering will have the tombstone date.
Ooh, hint, hint. Say no more. Say no more.
And
But in this version, I just don't see why.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's just a fan theory I apply to everything because of I guess that particular version. And I guess with that, gentlemen, we shall move on to Act 2, which is pretty much the entirety of Scrooge's interactions with Ghost of Christmas Past. And funny enough, Scrooge's past.
Whoa.
Springs, why don't you start us off this one?
Yeah, talking about effects, you guys see the strain on the past's cap floating?
That would be my first point as well. We all saw the fucking string. It's very obvious.
Yep.
It's a good try with the shadowing, but the very brightness of past kind of gives it away.
It's very well shot. They do their best with the shadowing, but I agree. I like the intention behind the effect of it kind of just floating there.
Yeah.
Another thing I found amusing in this that I doubt was intentional was him saying, "Are you the spirit?" And I just wrote, "Huh," in my notes. Who else is this? It's 1 o'clock.
Something else.
You saw this orb of light turn into a person. Are you the spirit?
Well, then true,
I'm the tax collector.
Not to defend Scrooge, but he also didn't fully believe Marley was a ghost.
Well, it's still a stupid line. Who else would this be other than a spirit?
Another ghost.
which is a spirit.
True, but
Yeah, but is it the spirit that Marley sent?
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
people
it's a different
believe
spirit that
Marley's
happened at
words.
1:00.
Yeah, this is very semantics on words play. I understand the intention behind the line. I think they could have done something else with the script line there. Instead of him saying, "Are you the spirit?" You could have asked. I think Scrooge handles it better actually. Doesn't he say, "Are you the spirit Marley foretold or whatever," or something he says to that.
Something like that, yeah. More along
I
the
think
lines.
that's better. I think it's a better line than just this, which implies, well, I guess what Crimson took away as just straight up confusion on his part, which is unnecessary.
True. This, I've been battling it back and forth. It might have my least favorite shot in this act. It's just so weird looking to me of when young Scrooge and his father get in the carriage
Oh, I know
and
what
the
you're talking about.
shot is like in the carriage to show normal day Scrooge looking at them.
In
Something
between
about that
them.
is so off looking.
You know what it is?
I think they spliced the shots.
Is that? Or are they like green screen? Like, is he
I
green
think-
screen through the carriage wall?
I think the shots are spliced, and I also think it's bad forced perspective.
Yeah, it might be my least favorite shot in the movie. It's just, it looks so weird.
It's really
Well, it's because a lot of shots we'd see this as, you'd have the two characters in the foreground be somewhat blurred as a depth. But this, they went with both of them being crisp. The
Yeah.
foreground characters and the background character of Scrooge, which kind of
Also-
leaves a weird mental trick, because that's not how eyes work.
Yeah, also with how close their heads are in the shot so that they're both in frame. That must be one small carriage and their legs are right on top of each other.
And that's not impossible.
not
They're just
impossible.
quite small.
It's just, obviously everything there is just for the intention of the shot, and I agree. It's as much as I
Yeah,
would,
but his sister's also in there somewhere.
yeah. I really
Oh, behind the
wa-
camera.
I really want to like the shot, but obviously I agree. It looks very weird.
Good idea, poor execution.
Yeah, there you go. I will jump to, I guess his love story that kind of fell apart.
Far better than Scrooge,
Absolutely,
the previous one.
so much better.
Yeah.
A lot more layers to this one. And since I could talk about this now in relation to as to why I like the exchange a little bit more for the merchants and selling corn, is that shows like the style of business that was keeping him late to their date, pretty much. It's kind of how I took it. So it just kind of showed for me it was a kind of a through line in terms of like what his focus always is on. That even when he's multitasking, it's always business related. And for me, I guess that scene, a lot of the importance of that scene, I guess, came through for me here when he showed up late to their date and they end up breaking up because of it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see the connection you're making with it. I mean, this definitely made this, because I complained in Scrooge how little time we had with past, because present and future had a decent amount of time. Past had like nothing. This, we get a lot of past, and we get a lot on Scrooge, which is very beneficial for Scrooge.
Yeah.
In this iteration.
I
very nice.
agree.
I like.
And we even get a new character that isn't referenced at all. And I don't know all the versions, but the ones I can think of being his.
Fan.
Yeah,
His
being that
sister.
guy.
Well, Crimson, is that who we're talking about?
The guy he apprenticed under.
Oh, his boss.
Fezziwig?
Yeah.
Wasn't Fezziwig in Scrooge?
Was he? Well, what part was he in Scrooge?
Oh, you know what? He wasn't.
No.
You're right. Past was literally one room in Scrooge.
Yeah, it was just. Well, we talked about how they sped ran it, and the relationship with Betty or.
Belle?
Sorry. Yeah.
Belle.
Betty? Yeah.
Yeah, Belle.
Sorry. I'm so known to iterations of Fezziwig that I guess I really does stand out from Scrooge that he's not there. So.
Yeah, and it's cool to see like I guess how chill his boss is. Like he had good influences, but obviously he still had things that held him back from like intaking all their lessons and stuff like that. Because his boss is encouraging him to loosen up and enjoy life a little bit, you know.
Yeah, put the ledger down. You're young. Have fun. Um, no, a line I thought was interesting is from Belle implying that she knew Scrooge before he worked at Fezziwig's.
Um,
Being there's been a change in you since you've come to Fezziwig's. You were so gloomy, which means they've had more of a past.
they might have gone to school
Well,
together, maybe, but I took it as that like she knew him because her father's the worker, right? Her father's Fezziwig.
Oh, I never got that. Is Belle Fezziwig's daughter?
I thought she was, but that just might be my interpretation from this version.
I don't know. I don't know on that.
I never got that.
I mean, she could have seen Scrooge, and Scrooge not really know she exists. Also, they might not have had a relationship of knowing each other before um, the events we saw of him offering up a dance and everything.
That's true. They may have not had, a relationship, but they knew of each other.
That's what I mean by a relationship. Like, he might not have known of her until this thing, this dance, but she could have known of him. If she's like, you've changed working there, because she saw him elsewhere before the job.
Okay. Little off because he's the one who approached her.
I know.
Okay. Well, you're saying he doesn't know of her.
Before you were saying she knew, or they knew each other before the job, the apprenticeship. I'm saying he doesn't have to know her before that. This scene of him asking for the dance could be his first time with her.
Okay. It very much could be, but I find that weird.
How come?
If someone you're off-putted, not interacting with, but they know of you, that's why Belle said you were so gloomy, which could also be just interpreted as like off-putting, then up to the point of a party for Scrooge to kind of 180 of a character to approach her and ask for a dance when he doesn't know her seems off.
180.
It would feel more inclined then with what you're saying that if Belle approached him and asked him, and being a party and what Fezziwig said, he agreed.
This is way back when guys would ask any girl to a dance. I don't really have an issue with him asking without knowing who she is. Yeah, you could overhear it during the party and stuff. I mean, I don't think it's that out there.
Okay. Then agree to disagree. The difference.
Yeah. All right. I
Well, no. Hey, whoa. We don't get it all right. So, what do you think, writer?
I was gonna say I actually don't have really anything to add. I'm neutral on this one. Because I don't know if I remember the scene well enough to kind of comment on it. Because I remember I took it as she was potentially Fezziwig's daughter, so I clearly had a very different interpretation of the scene than both of you did. So
Okay, so for you, then Scrooge would know her being just like his employer's daughter.
yeah, like that's how I took it. Like they know each other because of that. So that's why I can't really add anything to your conversation. I think what Crimson's right though. It is the era like that people wouldn't just ask each other out even if they don't know each other. But you're right in the sense that it's implied they have a history, which is why I guess why I got maybe my brain filled that in. I don't know if I saw it wrong though, to be honest with you. So maybe next time.
Okay. To me, it just sounded like by the line used of Belle saying she past knew him, that implied to me that she knew him before his apprenticeship with Fezziwig that Scrooge's father offered to him.
I agree. It implies she knew him before that. Yeah.
just not knowing what to what extent. I guess.
I will jump back to one of the school scenes with Scrooge sitting by his younger self, and he and Past have a back and forth. And I like that Scrooge points out he has his other small joys, like books and stuff like that. So I like that he's defending his upbringing a little bit. And I think it's I think Past says something about like the characters not being real or whatever from whatever his books he's reading. And then Scrooge kind of laughs at that and is like trying to tell that to a child that the characters aren't real to them. You know what I'm saying? I really enjoyed that his back and forth with Past, because it's very, very like it's a gentle back and forth over who he is as a character, because obviously Scrooge is going to get tested a lot over the course of the film in terms of his who he is as a person at his core. So I like that he is defending himself in as a kid, because the kid doesn't know better.
Not just that, he's very proud of himself as a kid, because through his eyes he triumphed through a lot of hardship with his father and other obstacles.
Yeah.
So someone putting that into question, of course he'd want to defend it.
Yeah.
Very prideful in that manner.
To quote one of my other favorite Christmas movies, sometimes the realest things in the world are the things we can't see. So I like that he's kind of has that additional element going on when he's explaining, like, you know, the other characters are real to him, so why does it matter, you know? Good stuff. I like that. Spriggs,
Gotcha.
why don't you jump somewhere? Unless you want to add something more to that.
No, that's fine. It was interesting, the film usage of when Belle tells Scrooge that, like, you're good to go, you're a free man now, kind of like, you know, we're breaking up. That, like, fanfare starts playing, and it's, like, really triumphant. It seemed odd. I figured it should be more of, like, a sorrowful, because we're following Scrooge.
I took it as more dramatic, more so than fanfare.
Same.
Was the music really that upbeat? I don't remember it being upbeat in that scene.
I don't remember it being upbeat really either. I wouldn't say it was sorrowful either.
No.
I thought it was more of a dramatic thing.
Okay, yeah, I could fit with that.
Upbeat, like. So it didn't stand out as being off-putting to the scene that's being depicted. I think that's how I watched it.
I guess it came across of like a clue moment of like, this is a moment in the film kind of thing, like a big change look, or something like someone would look past on, like, I don't know how to define it, but
it is an audio cue of this is
kind
important.
I guess kind of a movie moment by the use of the music.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
Something I liked about the beginning of this flashback or whatever, they go into the past, is how joyful and happy he was when he saw the kid, his old friends, his childhood friends, their classmates, whoever they were, people he knew, he recognized. He was happy to see them.
Yeah, I remember my boys from elementary school. It was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, he knew all their names and last names. Very, very invested with them. He was very happy, and I'm like, this kind of ushers more into him not taking this super seriously. He thinks this is going to be a positive experience for him. He's going to enjoy it, not knowing what's ahead for him. Because he's not like, what is this? What's going on? Why are you taking me here? Yeah. He's actually happy to be here and actually soaking it in.
Yeah, I like that. Past, it's definitely a psychological move, but Past is easing him into it. You know?
Yeah. They didn't have to start right there.
Yeah.
I counted in this version, not to a T, but I believe this depiction of Past Belle had roughly 7 kids. Could
That's
be
what
more.
I had written down.
I like how we keep talking about kids now from Scrooge.
Well, Scrooge was 17, and that was certainly an eye-opener. So this one I think was about 7.
Yeah, that's what I had it up to.
I agree. I wrote that down. Funny enough as well. I'm happy. I find it funny that we all wrote that down because of what happened in Scrooge.
Oh, more iterations we're going over. I'll jot it down.
Yeah, this one's much more reasonable. This is that was the we see them we return to her kind of still in the past, but we meet up with her after Marley has died, right? Or like just after.
He's dying.
Dying.
He's not doing well.
Okay.
So it's roughly about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and difference between this one and Scrooge, she actually guessed it was Scrooge. Scrooge, she didn't usher a guess. This one she did.
Well, it started off with this that she didn't want to guess.
Yeah, but she ended up giving one, being right. As a whole, the scene pretty much delivers the same, I think, as Scrooge. Her and her husband stuff. I don't think they got too creative with adding stuff on this one.
A cold, lonely, poor man. Oh, Scrooge. That's
alone with a candle. Yeah.
And then some. I don't think it was supposed to be funny, but he didn't. Being a first time, I'm like, oh, interesting. But he didn't do it again for any of the other like ghosts that visit him. When he tells like the past, like, stop tormenting me, and he like squeezes his head and like squints his eyes, kind of look. It was a little humorous, at least for me.
I wake up from his nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I find him the way he banishes past to be pretty funny.
That I like because I believe that's depicted in an illustration in the book.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Kill it if you have to.
Of the cap being put over.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
This is gonna be interesting. It reminds me of the way you typically put out candles, because when you put out candles, like if you have a bunch of candles lit, one of the easiest ways to put them out is you have like a cap, like a bell cap that you put over the candles to kind of deprive it of oxygen, and that's what puts the candle out, and you just kind of go from one to the other. So this kind of reminded me of a larger version of that in a weird way.
I think that's exactly what their intentions with it were.
Really?
A candle cap, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, I don't feel weird anymore. I feel normal.
I find it odd that it does.
Supposed to be a candle light, right? That's what the ghost is supposed to represent.
Exactly. No, the past one's so weird in the book. It's like supposed to have it. I don't know. It sounds like it's like something behind like a broken mirror. Like it's sometimes it has a head, then it doesn't. Then it has like 20 legs, and then it has 2 legs, and then. But it's like an old man who doesn't have wrinkles in the form of a child, or so. It's really weird how it's depicted in the book.
You seem a lot more knowledgeable than when we covered Scrooge. Did you just read the book or something?
I may have read a little more of the book.
Okay. I figured.
But yeah, the past one's different.
I assume because of that, because I do remember this. I remember the past one is the one that always varies wildly, depending on whichever version of the film you're going to watch or story you're watching.
Yeah. I find it weird that the cap doesn't go with the past. Like the Ghost of Christmas Past, it doesn't have the cap with them when they're in the like looking over the memories of Scrooge. It's only in the bedroom.
It transitions though, right? If I remember correctly. So like whenever we transition,
Yeah, the past takes place through the cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fuck it, that thing's a black hole. Holy shit.
Yeah, so I guess they're
So
in the cap.
Okay, so Scrooge never left his room, I guess, for the visions.
Yeah,
it's all like looking through the. Okay, I guess that explains it better than being like transported back to the room and then Scrooge being like, "All right, time to murder you."
Yeah, that would be the best way to read that, I think.
I don't know if I have much more. But I will go to. I like Scrooge defending parts of his past, so I like that he's very happy to see his old boss again. He remembers that as a very, good time in his life, having a mentor like that.
Well, a father figure.
Yeah,
His father wasn't really there for him, so he found it in his boss.
yeah, good stuff. You know me, I love my found family shit.
Yeah. And I like how Past was talking about how the money was spent for the party, and Scrooge is like, well, the happiness given was worth £1,000. So it's already showing a little bit of a crack in Scrooge and learning that money isn't about, or money isn't everything. There's some value in experiences as well as the material.
And a lot of what Past is doing is setting Scrooge up for present and future to really hammer the points home. And I like that it's
especially present.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thematically as a storytelling aspect because of what Past is setting up here. Like it's clear that he feels particular about this party because it provided him such a wonderful and joyful memory, but he hasn't quite grasped that he can expand that point of view to everything else yet. That money isn't everything. So it's a nice, like, subtle setup for on the Past's part, with regards to how they're going to approach trying to get Scrooge to change his behavior and change who he is to be a better person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Spriggs, you got a point?
Oh, I wish I did, but I'm fresh out for this act.
Well then, do you have any points you'd like to grab us to Crimson?
I'll bring up a bridging point that spans this ghost onto the next one. And that's, why are the ghosts late? The spirits, both past and present, were both not exactly at 1, or 1 and 2, respectively. And I didn't really
listen.
really get
travel
that.
time from the spirit world to our world is very dodgy.
Well, they actually all appear on the steps where Marley was, so it takes them a moment to get into the room, find their bearings. They've never been in Scrooge's house before.
Yeah, they got lost. It's a big place. But clearly it's for the writing purpose of having Scrooge get enough time to say, oh, Marley was wrong, or him doubting what's happening. It's for that purpose.
Just enough.
But it adds enough to why, though, in universe are the spirits late? Are they waiting for him to make snide comments to be like, ha, I can use that on you later?
I think the only ghost that's exempt from this rule is Future. Because Marley explicitly says Future will show up when they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these two had a timeline and they didn't stick to it.
He's a doubter who doesn't believe.
Well, that is the end of my Act 2.
All right.
Leading into 3.
I guess we shall move on to Act 3, which, shockingly enough, according to my notes, is the entirety of present.
Whoa.
Hey, did you two catch it this time? Present talked about his siblings.
Yep.
All 1,800 of them.
Yeah, got it this time.
Over 1,800.
Yeah.
I think if it's repeated like this, you're probably right, Spriggs, with the religious aspect of referring to, I guess, that the birth of celebrating, the birth of Christ in regards to Christmas, celebrating his birthday. I think you might be right with that. At least with the intention of their story.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the intention.
I guess I will start us off, since I should probably start us off as one. Once again, the entrance of present, so flamboyant, so dramatic, gets immediately you understand who this character is. Just by looking at him.
Is the exposure in the room risen? Like edited? Is it edited to have higher exposure? Or is it really just like a bright spotlight?
You mean like editing After Effects kind of look? Or
yeah, when he opens the door. Like it's so white.
I mean, he's just a white silhouette. There's like no detail in him. It's so bright. I can't say. It's hard to tell really because the rest of the room doesn't seem overexposed, so it might just be a very bright light that they used.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with no because the colors aren't that exaggerated. We see a lot of reflecting off of like glimmering stuff that's hanging behind him and stuff like that because of the bright lights around him. So I understand why you might walk away with that interpretation, but I don't think so. I think it's just all the bright things just reflecting the bright lights in the room.
Okay,
I
guess
think he's
also
leaning more towards walking into the room.
Yeah, walking
blinding
into the
light.
room.
Yeah.
Where he's like shielding himself before adjusting.
Oh.
But I guess for a made-for-TV budget look, it's probably a bright light rather than edited after.
Yeah.
And they do have some effects, obviously. Marley through the window. The light under the door definitely had some sort of effects going on with it. But that one I'm going to go with bright light tepidly. I don't know 100% on that one.
So they just tried to blind Mr. Scott. Got it.
I suppose they did.
I guess so. Yeah. We'll go down the line here to start us out. Crimson, go.
All right. I'll just say I like this present. I liked the previous one from Scrooge, but I like this one more. This one is far more brutal and less hand-holding. He's not afraid to...
This present has passionate morals.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's not afraid to say it.
He will backtalk Scrooge verbally. It's actually quite great to watch. Very satisfying.
Yeah. It's something they did, I think, better than in Scrooge. Was something I complained about where he just said my own words. This, you use my own words against me. Very similar, but different enough to where it actually makes sense with the scene to why he would be saying it in the manner he did.
Yeah, he's driving the point home, and so there's no misunderstanding.
Yes, and it's pretty solid, and I like the homeless area that we get into towards the end of present here. The kids under the rope, little out there, little weird, but I liked it. It's a lot of subjective point with this point.
Yeah, the homeless thing of under the bridge or wherever they are, the sewer drain tunnel or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know any adaptations that do that one or show that. I think it's kind of in the book because present shows them like differences around the world, but of like other things happening. So I guess that works with that, but I don't know any other like film or TV version that shows that. The kids under the robe, though, that of Ignorance and Want, are from the book.
I think I have a nitpick to add. Well, actually, no. Spriggs, you go.
No.
Go down the line.
Oh, Ignorance and Want is... I think it's just because of this version of Christmas Present that he deliberately on his own shows, because in the book I believe Scrooge sees like a foot poking out from the robe and questions it. So it's like asking like curiosity towards it versus showing Scrooge of like own validation, I guess, for the present himself to give more purpose of his meaning of morals onto Scrooge.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, which version do you prefer in terms of execution?
Ooh, for any or
no, for specifically with regards to the children.
It's not in Scrooge, and it's not in next week's, but the week after has one. And I don't want to spoil so much, but if that's all I can say.
No, I mean comparing this one to the book one.
Oh, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Ooh, oops. Sorry. This one, to the book, this one's fine because it actually shows present explaining ignorance and want and kind of using Scrooge's words against him in what he means by what they are, but also saying like these are your kids, this is what everyone's kids are. I think it fits fairly well.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious to see like if you have whether it's just like this version is that you like, or if you had a preference between the two.
This was a fine version.
Yeah,
that this isn't like insulting or offensive or anything of like a
think
take.
With what you described of how Scrooge notices them first in the book, I would be curious and want to read the book to see how that lands. I actually quite like how this version of it works because it's a part of Present's monologue to kind of really ground down Scrooge's like morals.
Yes.
So it's very fitting for me, I guess, in this one.
Also, this version doesn't exactly have Ghost of Christmas Present like dying. He just leaves.
No, Scrooge didn't really either, which is a point you brought up.
That Scrooge died?
No, he doesn't leave.
No, President didn't die in Scrooge either, which is a point you brought up.
Yeah, he just leaves.
Yeah, he just faded away.
I
in the
believe it's
fireplace.
different from the book. Yeah.
I will jump to a nitpick. We see that they use the torch to see your travel. Presence torch. They didn't do that the first time that they travel with it. They just kind of appear in the market square.
Yeah.
So
and then the torch isn't around. Like he leaves his torch. I don't know why he has it in the market.
Yeah. So
well, they used the torch as the transition piece. You guys saw that, right? It was panning up the staff of the torch, and then they were in the town.
Yes, I believe. And then I think it also does the same with like is it Bob Cratchit's where it's the window and you're going towards the window and then the flame just pops
the flowers in the window and then the flame. Yeah.
Okay. But
yeah, they were using the torch as a transition
there.
piece.
Yeah, like I said, I think I could swear they forgot to use it once. I just don't remember where.
I don't know if it's used from the market to Bob Cratchit's.
I don't think so.
I just find it odd that he loses it.
That's
the torch.
I mean, when he's opening his robe, he's not holding it either.
No, but like they're not standing at Bob Cratchit's and he has the torch. When they're at Fred's, he doesn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
No. He's his own character. He can leave it if he wants to leave it. I don't have much.
I suppose so. It just questions why does he have it at the market?
Because he wanted to. I don't know.
No, okay.
I don't
it falls into the realm of you don't
issue.
know his abilities and powers. I just have a small nitpick in terms of like I guess the visual depiction of the transition of by using the torch.
Consistency.
Consistency. Yes.
Yes. I find it weird that it's the market. There's snow everywhere, yet the fish are just on a wooden table. Like they're not on ice. Like they're not on ice. Like they don't need to be on blocks.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, it's cold.
Yeah, this is the one time of year you don't actually have to worry about that.
Just like all the turkeys that were hanging on that giant raft aren't frozen. It's cold enough to keep them cold.
Another small detail that I do like about this is I think I like that Scrooge is so I guess amused, I guess would be the word, between like how the Cratchits kind of argue over him pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And
the wife berates him while Bob's like, come on, this is Christmas, be positive.
And then I like that Present just kind of, again, I really like how it just digs into Scrooge.
That was your takeaway, that Bob appreciates your contribution for the feast. Yeah. No, he was good. He didn't let any opportunity slip by to jab at Scrooge.
Yep. Which is
I
good.
do-
I like that.
I have an odd question. It's just something I don't know about British currency. Is a singular pence called a penny?
No, it's called a pence. It's
Okay,
a
so
completely
what-
different currency.
Okay, so what is the currency of a penny?
Did they say penny?
Yes.
Instead
He
of
says not a
what part
penny
did they say?
more. When Bob Cratchit's talking to Peter about the wages he'll be getting for a job,
Oh, that might just be an inconsistency.
That might be a
he
slip up.
says, "Oh, not a penny," and I went, "Is that a term for the currency? Because that's otherwise that's two different currencies he's talking about."
Yeah, I think that's just an inconsistency then with currencies. It's a little nitpick there for me again, but I can understand the confusion. A lot of people use them interchangeably, and considering this is this is CBS. This would be an American mid movie, so that seems like the kind of mistake that Americans would make when trying to adapt British material.
Ooh, then that's a nitpick.
Yes.
Let's see. The saying "not a penny more" was first referenced in 1976 in literature.
So
So
fairly new.
that's just a slip
But
up
even-
from the writers here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so double problem. Not
Yeah,
only
they
not
added
invented of
a
a phrase,
modern
but also
slang.
Yeah.
currency
Sorry.
that didn't exist.
Yep. It happens.
Slip up there. Good catch.
Yep. So that's a nitpick. Slip up there.
Another nitpick I found of Peter cooking or whatever, and Mrs. Cratchit's like, save some for the rest of us. The cuts between Peter are not, they're a mess. Of like the potato being cooked,
yes.
in his mouth, in the,
Consistency,
like,
yeah.
going up and down. All those cuts are different places.
Continuity.
Yep.
Word I'm looking for. Yeah, agreed.
Actually, this act, I have a lot of little nitpicks. Actually, looking at my notes, another one of when they, I'll just go down. Bob Cratchit thanks Scrooge for being the founder of the feast, and then all the kids one by one say Mr. Scrooge, and it's not like all together unanimously. Like they're waiting for each person to say it.
I mean,
Yeah,
that
they've
could just be a
practiced
thing
on
they
stage.
do.
I'm
I-
kidding.
It,
But yeah.
it could be a thing they do. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be.
But it's a little nitpick. And then the other thing, which actually might be a slight problem, I guess, for the world, of it could be believable, but when they're at Fred's and Fred's talking to his partner, I forget her name, and they're talking about Scrooge, and Scrooge talks to them, but then President's like, hey, they can't hear you. The pauses of Fred and his spouse for Scrooge to talk is simply there so we can hear Scrooge's words.
Oh, like how the
Well, that's
conversation's not
for-
continuing.
That's for
Yes,
the movie.
because they
Yeah.
paused for Scrooge to talk,
Yeah.
where they can't hear Scrooge.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a movie magic thing. It's the same thing what's the best way to describe this? It's the same thing when the world does not continue off camera.
True, but it could have been cleaned up easier. Like if it cut to Scrooge talking to Present about what was just said, and you could hear chatter in the background, and then cut back to them talking
Yeah, I
to
agree.
incorporate, could do it better in that way. But it's the pauses with them on screen in one frame doesn't seem real, because it really plays off like what Fred just said about Scrooge really made his spouse pause. It's like, oh man, I can't believe he would say that.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're going for, and I purely think it's for the film's sake and not on the characters giving a pause. It's
It works for the storytelling of the movie, but it's a nitpick because that's not realistic to what would occur, I guess.
mhm. Let's see. Doing a callback to something we said we'd come back to earlier, which is the portrayal of earlier in the film being more cleaner, happier, to make the homeless stuff more of a shock to Scrooge. Springs, you disagreed, and we said we'd shelve that for when we get here. So,
Yes, I think the wording of what's being said with that homeless family of, we're not going to poorhouses, we're not going to be split up, is more of the use of that through the dialogue for the shock to Scrooge of like, well, my taxes and everything, and then his, back and forth with the present. I think the lines being said is more of the shock needed than the location of being put there of poor. I think he knows the poor exists, so being put here is kind of like, why are we here? And the wording of it is such that's more the shock.
The visual portrayal, though,
common coincidence, or is there really a god? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah. I mean, if a bunch of homeless people and stuff, and him walking by them, and that's it, normal day, and then this, I don't think that line would be big enough for the reaction. Then I think it would have to be a culmination.
I don't know. I just see it as like he doesn't know their story. Doesn't pay mind to know their story. And I think both could be played as a confusion of like, why are we even here? Because he does that a lot with Yet to Come of like, why are we here? So I think this could still be that of like an explanation.
Well, he's asking why because Yet to Come doesn't say anything. So all he can do is ask questions for that.
I see it as both. I see it partially of that too, of what you're saying.
Because if we had everything was horrible, then he gets the tunnel, I feel like we, and certainly I, would be like, why didn't you realize this sooner? You would overheard people complaining about wanting to find work. There's nothing. That would just be stuff you overhear walking down the street if they're laid around everywhere. Even if you're not paying attention, you overhear it. I think it's quite intentional that they leave out this stuff in the beginning to bolster this at the end here of present.
Okay. Okay, for the movie's sake of showing the shock of the poor, for the depiction of the story of the shock also onto Scrooge, that works. I find it weird that there's no poor, though, depicted early on, just for the offset difference onto Scrooge of being someone who's against Christmas and everyone else around him in the town who is for it, which vetoes out the use of needing poor, which even if they didn't say a line, I think would be used to portray like their presence still known to Scrooge, but a story he doesn't know.
Is not the
Yeah, I mean the dialogue definitely helps bolster it. I'm agreeing with that. Yeah. What were you about to say, right?
Yeah, doesn't the line about him when he's being approached for the charity, does that not bolster the idea already that we don't necessarily need to see the poor because Scrooge doesn't need to see it? Like, he knows that there are poor people out there, but it's not a part of his life at all. His life...
Well, true. Like, he completely ignores them, goes past them, pays no mind to them. But us actually seeing the depiction of the town, of him walking through, that there isn't a single one present.
Oh, no, we don't...
Seems odd to me.
No, I mean, like, no, that's what I'm saying. Is that not a reference to them without us having to see them?
Well, Sprinks is being, why don't we see them? They should be there.
If the merriment of joy of Christmas, especially, I mean, I guess from Scrooge, of the other version we saw, of would that not be a great time of generosity, of trying to ask and get things for the poor? And it just seems like they're not in the town until the part where we go to with presents. And even with present, we don't know if that's possibly even in London.
Yeah, we don't know where that is.
Thematically, I'm in agreement with Crimson. It's done for the point of the shock value with regards to Scrooge. I don't know if I have an issue with that because cities tend to try and regulate their poor population all the time. So, like,
okay,
their poor populations are always segregated away. There's
Okay,
exceptions.
That's
to
why
that.
you get the slums or whatever,
Yeah.
different areas. But, no, I
okay.
get the point.
Yeah,
All right.
I understand what you're
My
trying
problem
to say.
isn't my problem isn't with him being shocked of the poor. My issue is they don't exist in the movie until here.
Mhm.
Until it's needed for the audience to see something change of Scrooge's character.
Yeah, that might be a personal.
I'm just not a
thing.
fan of that.
Yeah, I mean that ties. See, for me, that ties into your. In a way, it ties into your one-time rule almost.
Well, it's something they could depict, like in the opening, we see the giant racket turkeys. We could have like a kid trying to steal one of them in the background while the
Actually,
music's playing and the credits are rolling.
quick question: Is not Scrooge confusing Tiny Tim as a beggar evidence he does see them occasionally?
I mean, he knows they
True.
exist.
Yeah, that's why he even comments on them, like
I
the
get what you're saying.
workhouses
You're
and
just
everything.
trying.
But
I'm pushing back just a little bit because I think I understand your
Tiny-
point as well. Just
actually, Tiny Tim kind of helps me then, because then he's actually looking at a poor person, or the believability of someone is like he's actually interacting with them other than ignoring them, which is even weirder than that there are no poor around the town we see. He doesn't have to interact with every single one, but it's like almost a fascination that one's there for him to see, even though it's Tim.
Okay. I get your point. I'm just
It
questioning it.
it just feels
for the sake
it
of
just feels like
explaining.
it's a weird thing to look at. Like it feels like they're outlawed or something.
I mean, modern governments currently try to do that, but I get what
But
you're.
we don't see a police force walking around.
No, I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just saying I agree. It does come across like they're outlawed and they're segregated to like the slums or whatever. I agree with that. And so okay, just to make my stance on this clear, Springs. I agree with your point. I know what you're trying to say. I think it's a good point. The only reason I'm not pushing back against you. I'm asking you questions to help kind of expand your ideas so that everyone else understands when they listen to the podcast.
Gotcha. Yes, I think it would have strengthened the movie more of tone if we see more of a presence of poor, opposed to the sudden need to see them just for the sake of a change of Scrooge.
I think the best way to show that not necessarily would have to be Scrooge, but you can show them with like when Bob and Timmy are going home. Like they just pass like maybe one person on the street, just so you know that they're there. I guess. Right.
I guess this is a question, kind of, because Ryder, you bring it up. Is this kind of a damage into world building? Because they're not present until needed.
No.
When they would be present at all cost.
I don't think it affects the world building actually, because for me, what would constitute as damaging world breaking is that the poor aren't referenced at all, and this is the first instance of it. So the fact that they are at least referenced, even though we don't see them, that to me doesn't constitute a world building issue. Then now that we have just been unveiled, I guess like unmasked to where they are, and it's the shocking reveal for Scrooge. If we didn't have the charity scene, if we don't have the Tiny Tim beggar line, and a few other like instances like simply like that, then I would agree that it's an issue. Like it would be a world building issue without those.
Okay. Because even the father or whatever, the poor father, says he got the wood off of a cart, which to me implies he was like in town.
Yeah.
He wasn't out in the woods or something where no one could see.
Yeah. I mean, he's still,
like we said, we don't know what town. We don't know where this.
That's also true. Yeah.
We also don't know. He's also fairly okay in terms of his dressing outfit. And then again, he's just dressing for the cold.
Yeah, he's not
kind
tattered.
Yeah.
Like
No,
the kids
but-
under the rope or anything.
But like I said, I agree with your point. I would not go as far as to say it's world building, in a world building issue, because we have at least references in dialogue and setup for it.
Yeah, for me, the thing that's keeping it from world building being broken necessarily is we don't have a reference to how bad the poor is in this area. It's a blanket statement of give to the poor. This street might not have that many poor people, so that would be latent everywhere.
That
So
might be
there's
why it's
no,
such a shock to see Tim.
yeah. So without any lines made to infer that they're heavily missed here, I can't say it's world building broken because we don't really know what the world building is for this town regarding the homeless or poor. So it's in the weird middle gray zone because we don't get anything for it. Man, all right. What a long talking point. Anything else on it before a new thing?
Not that I have.
None that I have either. But since you're taking the lead for this one, Crimson, why don't you jump to somewhere else?
Oh, all right. Let's see. It's going back to present berating Scrooge. A line that was also brought up in Scrooge was how Scrooge isn't worth a lot in heaven. And this one he's like, you're worth less than millions of children like Tim, or something along those lines. And it was well delivered in Scrooge, but it's even more with this one because this guy is just freaking brutal with it. I just love how stern he is, putting Scrooge in his place here.
And he's grinning because he knows he's right.
Yeah. And George C. Scott does a good job with his face for a lot of everything in this, actually. I don't think he had any weird things. Sprinks, you brought up his squinting bit. I don't really remember that in particular, so I might have to look again. But everything else looked very appropriate reactions for everything.
Yeah, I said a lot of
ways.
He plays comparatively to Scrooge from Scrooge. George C. Scott's interpretation of the character is a more subdued version of that character, and I do think that's for the point for when we get to our feature act, because we get to kind of see that him, I guess, pull out all the stops, I guess would be the right word for it.
Yeah.
Springs, you got any points left with present?
I only have one left, and that this version of Fred and his party is far less cruel towards Scrooge than other iterations. And it's actually just a game. And Fred doesn't really speak many cruel words against his uncle at all. Like other versions where they're actually like laughing at him.
Yeah. And this
which
one,
I guess could just be the whole more narrowed approach, more kind of that mundane, realistic feel sense rather than the very contrast pulls of negative and positive looks of characters.
Yeah. I mean, in this one, you get more of a sense of aching pain. Like the want to rekindle a relationship you don't have with your uncle from his nephew in that. Because like it's much more I just say mundane, it's laid back, it's reserved, and I actually very much love that because while they do drop the funny line in about Scrooge from his wife, it's showing off that he really does love his uncle in a way because he's not going to such lengths to berate him, you know?
Yeah, he's not berating him, he's not giving up on him. He does this every year, or plans on asking him every year to come to the parties.
And for me that was a subtle way to portray, I guess, how much his nephew really loves Scrooge and wants to reconnect with him. Because berating Scrooge is not the point of that, you know?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, good stuff. I agree. I really like the scene. And how about you, Crimson? How's your notes looking?
What about the line, silence as the grave? Leaving the party there. the final silence of the grave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be relevant.
I think I'm pretty much out. I guess the only thing I would add is there is a line of there's an exchange between Bob and his wife where they obviously are trying to keep an upbeat face, but they kind of have that look in their eyes like they know because they're the adults in the room. And again, it's very subtle. I appreciate that. It means because their relationship is pretty great otherwise, and I do like that little tidbit in there.
Yeah, and they do little subtle things because Scrooge was talking about outside of Bob's house how it's a nice house, and for the 15 he gets paid. Um, nice living conditions. And then he references how the goose is small, present, like that's all he can afford. But even before then, the wife was telling the kids to do stuff, and one of them was to put a thin layer of butter on the bread, just to show how they're trying to preserve what they have. It might be Christmas feast, but don't use all the butter.
Yeah, so like they're splurging, but you got to share.
They got a penny pinch where they can because they
You
can't
got a
afford to
pence
splurge
pinch.
too much.
Gotcha.
Hey, I didn't write it. And I guess the final thing I have for the act is the very end of it, where Present just leaves him and the open. It's not in his bedroom. And I thought that was pretty awesome of him.
Yeah.
He left him in the cold. We don't really know how long he was out there because future could come whenever he wanted. So this could have been an hour or 2 hours, who knows, of him just sitting out in the cold.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty effective because like he's leaving him out to dry the way that Scrooge leaves people out to dry,
Yeah.
It's very.
The only thing that stood out. Oh,
no, go ahead.
The only thing that stood out a little weird to me was that the people under the bridge didn't acknowledge him just being there, yelling out to the Present who isn't there anymore.
Oh, so is that real then? Like him being there?
Wait, what are you
guess
saying?
That brings. Well, he was left at the tunnel where the homeless people were, but they were never in the tunnel again. They don't acknowledge a man yelling. We never see them. They should be there.
Oh, I disagree.
Oh, all right. Why?
No, that's where they were of Present. We're no longer with Present.
Oh, you think he dropped him like in Future's lap, in preserve,
Yes.
so to speak, like he dropped him in Future's realm.
Yes, I believe that. That's why when he sits down outside the tunnel and we see the whole tunnel, it's pitch black. There's not a single fire in there.
Interesting.
I think we're in a different point of time when Present leaves.
That would explain things. I kind of wish they conveyed it a little bit better, but I like that a lot.
I don't know, because they don't show that with past and present. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. I don't feel like they portrayed that, if that was the intention.
Okay. It's just what I thought of it as, because the homeless aren't there, but it's also, I don't know, it just seems of Present to be like, yeah, I'm not taking you home. Stay here.
I agree. Which is why I thought he was actually out there, but you're saying he isn't there, he's ahead.
I think, yeah, he's there in the location, but his time presence of where he is isn't the present.
Yeah, so like otherwise people could see him in theory and interact with him, right? If it was true that he was just dropped there and left there.
Without a ghost presence.
Without Future already on the horizon coming for him.
Yeah, because with the presence of a ghost, no one can see or hear him. But with Present gone and Future not there yet, it's a real gray area if he's like in a ghostly sense without one.
All right, I'm out for Present, so I'm ready to move on if y'all are.
Yeah.
To the future.
To the future. This act will cover. Let's see. Let me check my notes. The future. There we go.
Oh, good one.
Springs, why don't you start us off?
I like the sound effect used for future or yet to come of being like an old creaky gate.
Yes.
I loved the sound effects / music revolving around.
I think
future.
that's really cool.
Me too. It has the. It's gonna be really weird, but it has like the Eastern kind of like bamboo water stick kind of feel to the sound effects. It's very,
Oh,
very
okay.
organically simplistic that I quite like.
Yeah.
Do you
Maybe
kind of
it's like a graveyard fence,
maybe
kind
yeah
of like iron sound. I don't know. It just really fit and gave this real uneasiness.
yeah. It's what helps I think is it's completely different from every other music in the film, so it really helps to separate
Yeah.
the
I don't
contrast
even.
for this.
I guess it's music. It just sounded like a sound effect and then kind of like a silence.
So, uh, obviously, before we dive too deep into this, I actually have a question. As we saw in Scrooge, Scrooge was pretty much a changed man, like halfway through present. Even earlier than that. Here, do you
Yeah.
think he is fully changed yet, or do you think he's still on the road?
Absolutely not.
What do you think's left for him to be changed?
I don't know, but it's not a 180, but I feel like it's a 150 or something, like for the next act.
Here?
Okay.
I don't
No,
know.
he's saying after
No,
future.
it just
Okay.
might be the mundane of like the acting they have. Like it's not, the cartoonish pull of either way that when he is in the next act, it just I'll save it for that act.
So, I
So to answer your question, no, I don't think he's fully changed.
I don't either. My point at this point at the start of the future act here is that he's well on his way. And I think the best indication of that is when present leaves and he goes through almost the stages of grief. He starts bargaining. I'm a reasonable man. Like we can have a debate about what I need to change about myself. We don't leave me, that sort of whole thing. For me, that was like, all right, we're now well on the road to like him turning around as a character.
I guess, with how he acts with present, it feels like nothing of past affected him
That's
to the road of change.
that's the thing about past for me, at least within this interpretation. I think past is all set up because it's present who exploits all of past setups. If that makes sense. So all of the nuggets that all the nuggets that like presence has laid, sorry, that past has laid down is entirely exploited by present to use, which is why one is super aggressive and the other is super passive.
True. Does present actually like talk on like Bell or Fez or like the change of him? Because I thought present really focused more on the stuff that wasn't of the ghost presence. Like the decrease of surplus population, like that's not of a ghost presence. That's just earlier.
So what I mean is more like the thematic setup. So with past, you're shown how much he valued money over people and relationships. And we are shown the dark side of what that with the Cratchits. And then you have his connection with his nephew, which is tied to his sister. So you get that aspect of his past as well. So when I say that past is entirely set up for him, I mean that more in the lesson sense, not the literal sense, if that makes any better sense.
Okay.
There's no direct
Maybe.
callback like that. And I disagree. I do think he did change a bit in past, based off of one of the examples I provided earlier of him saying the happiness he got was worth £1,000. He's putting value on emotions and experiences of which he didn't do before. He didn't care for all that stuff. So I do think he got opened up in the past.
Yeah, like I say, a lot of past is priming him for present, pretty much. At least that's how I interpret it thematically, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, it's not a it's not a 180 for me. I think the progression is just slower because I mean it obviously feels slower just compared to Scrooge because Scrooge was changed really quickly and in Scrooge and he just he was like, all right, I'm ready to go. I know what this is. I know what I'm about. That sort of thing. I know what this is about. So like he's primed and ready to be changed, or like to get through everything to act out his changed life or whatever in Scrooge. Whereas here, it's all a build up to the change. It's all like subtle differences being made to kind of culminate into that full change by the end. Not as easily detectable though. I'll say that. Though I do think it's very much scattered throughout the film.
All right.
I'll bring up a nitpick.
Ooh.
I'm going to be Sprinks right now. The
Hey, what's
fact
that mean?
that it was done once,
He wants to
I
dress up
found
as
to be
you.
an issue. There was something that happened once that I found to be an issue. That's why I said the Sprinks thing. Him touching the snow to reveal the grave. All the ghosts, he couldn't interact with the world around him. He couldn't talk to people, he couldn't touch stuff. But now he can touch the snow. I found that inconsistent.
This is going to be really weird. How deep do we want to go on this subject?
Yes, because in past he was able to sit on a bench.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes with ghost logic. Why can he stand on the floor? Why doesn't he fall through the floor?
Yeah, exactly.
That's ghost anything.
Exactly. So I was like, how deep do we want to take this line of logic? Because I mean, like, I understand what you're going for, but if we take it further, we're going to be crossing lines.
Do we see Scrooge try to grab something earlier, in either past or present?
He grabs Present's robe, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, but it was
No, that's a
instructed
ghost
to do
robe.
so. But
Well,
he isn't
they
like
are said
reaching out for
explicitly
Belle or
they can't talk to people, they can't interact with things. Sitting on a chair, obviously he's sitting on the chair, but the people can't see the chair getting the cushion sitting down, right? He's actually directly interfering with the snow. So if someone was in the cemetery, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, the snow is moving by a ghost." There's nothing like that, and all this other stuff. They can't interfere with things.
uh, yes and no. I would fully agree with you if we saw something of Scrooge trying to grab something he can't, like his hand going through something, or
So why is the line
phasing.
said as a rule you can't talk or interact? Why can't that be taken?
Because interact, I think, is like I see interact as talking.
Why can't it be physically touching things?
It could be.
It might be.
But I don't see that until here, and it's working.
It might be a rule specific to Future, and the only reason I bring this up is because I think Future tries to get him to take the sheet off of his bed as well. So obviously he has the ability to do it then, to interact then as too.
Oh.
But I have issues.
See,
No,
that's tough because it's also a possibility. We don't know.
Scrooge would have gone around trying to touch people and stuff.
Who would he tried to touch?
Dude, slap his father or go to Belle because he loved her. There would be interactions.
Yeah, but he doesn't. He just stands and watches. Maybe it's on to Scrooge with what you're saying. It's on to Scrooge that his belief of what he heard of the past, of can't interact, is him believing he can't physically touch, so he doesn't even try.
Just agree to disagree.
Okay. Great example, though, Ryder, with the
yeah.
But he didn't touch.
Like I said,
don't know.
the only reason I have that there is because, or the reason I take my mind on that is because Future is telling him to fucking pull the sheets back. So obviously Future has an expectation that he can interact with that. But I don't, again, I got no evidence. I just have that it might be a Future specific thing, and that's it.
Could be.
So, but otherwise, I think I'm in agreement with Crimson. It's really weird that they introduced this here, because at least they would have had made the effort to try and distinguish why he can act and do this compared to earlier.
But for me, again, where is this earlier?
No, well, no, I mean, like, he would just, like, even if you tried to interact with something, and then they just need to throw in a line, like, oh, you can't do that with me or here, because people can see you here, or something to that effect.
The Sprinks, if you're going with the angle, well, he was told he can't interact, so he doesn't. He's told he can't talk to them, and he still talks to them.
That's true, but the talking he sees doesn't
several times.
Yeah,
and he still does it.
Actually, he's talking. Well, that is true. He is talking beforehand. I just don't.
So if he's told I can't touch anything, why wouldn't he still try to touch things? That goes counter to what he's done with the talking thing.
I guess so, but he hasn't touched anything.
So I guess
I would fully be on both of your sides if in either past or present he tried to touch something and his hand went through it.
Like I said, you want evidence that he can't touch something to a certain point. I get that.
Then go with, he can't touch the snow.
Yeah,
but being that the snow is the only thing he has touched, maybe he could have touched everything.
Yeah, I'm just throwing around ideas. I get the nitpick pretty much. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to see it as a character flaw then, that he didn't try to touch things.
But I don't know what he would have wanted to try to touch. What, caress Belle's face one last time or something?
Seems reasonable to me. Something like that. Or run after her when he didn't agree or something. And then try to turn her around. There's a lot of things.
Try to grab his past self, being like, "You fool, you screwed up." And
sure.
I just don't. Well, this Scrooge doesn't seem to be so exaggerated or enthusiastic in action to do such a thing. Actually, with past, he's all still about himself. Like, stop tormenting me. Rather than the actions of everything around in that vision. I mean, the action he does do is he kills it by extinguishing the flame of past.
Mm-hmm.
But well, no, because that's different. That's the ghost presence. And if he's in a ghost form, he can't interact or talk to people, then it would make sense if, like, the candle pop, he can touch, and he doesn't phase through that. Or I guess also with presence robes, he can touch. But the snow is not a ghostly thing.
No,
it's not conjured up by yet to come.
Real snow.
All right.
Yeah. No, but something I do have that's a one-time occurrence, which is a nitpick for me, when Yet to Come is outside the exchange, and Scrooge is like, "Oh, it's like a second home for me. Why are we here?" When Yet to Come points and Scrooge goes to the exchange, there's like whispers of voices, and it's the only time that happens. And I don't know if that's like people on the street, like that's supposed to be like a background noise of like other people talking, or if that's supposed to be like coming from Yet to Come of like an eeriness. I couldn't tell what that was trying to depict.
When was the whispers? Like when Future is pointing, like, to tell him to get into the exchange? Like to go outside?
To go into the exchange, and he's outside, and he's walking up to it, and Yet to Come is now like a shadow, like in the snow look. There's like just these background voices, but they're like really whispery. It's not just people like talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know if that's where that's coming from, or if that's supposed to make it like sound like a busy street, or if it's an eeriness sense because of Yet to Come. I couldn't tell, but it only happened in that one part.
I see.
I don't remember it. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't remember it either. It could be just like is it in the middle of the conversation or after the conversation?
It's right. it might be like at the tail. I can't tell if it starts after they finished or if it's at the tail end. But Scrooge is walking toward the exchange and you can hear it.
Okay.
But if they're talking,
It
might. It's it's faint.
It might be them transitioning into the conversation we're supposed to listen in. So it's an easy way for to clue the audience in on the conversation with the way you just described it to me. I'm not sure. I'd have to rewatch it, but that sounds like what it is to me.
Maybe it seems to be playing off a scarier thing than that, but
quite possibly. All right. To kind of add a little bit more, just to kind of when they are about to go in the exchange, I again love playing with shadows. I loved it. The way Future looked cast across the snow.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. So tiny little note for me, I guess.
I don't know where the backlight's coming from out in the public street, but it's a cool visual.
Yeah,
I like a lot of Future, except for the time where he like scrolls across the screen, like on a wheeled platform,
like a sheet on a piece of string that goes past the camera.
Maybe
kind of like a wipe transition, a little bit.
A little.
No,
I think it's like at the graveyard, and he goes, "Why are we here?" And he's pointing, and then he flies by, and when he goes from the right side to the left side, and when he goes to the left, I think he's then like beckoning Scrooge to come closer with his hand.
Okay, yeah,
but that could be. Okay, is that like a forced perspective thing? Like, could that be like really close to the camera but small for them to move it, or do you think that's like normal sized yet to come?
I'm pretty confident that's normal. Right next to Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean towards normal as well. But
but he's clearly on a track or something, and it just looks a little funny because of that.
He's on a clothesline.
Yeah. It'd be true.
There was never mind.
So I really like that when we catch up with Bob Cratchit's family, and obviously Tiny Tim is dead, and they're celebrating his life as their way of mourning. It's like they're all clearly sad, but they're still trying to be hopeful about it. I like that. The way that they all, in a way that actually, I think I talked about this in the first one with Scrooge. I would have liked more interaction with the family and their intake as to how they're dealing with the loss of Tiny Tim, and their way to deal with it in this is they're all trying to be spot on for Bob. So it felt to me a lot more of like an interconnectivity of like support, which you would expect in a loving and caring family, which is an aspect I think I prefer in this over the other one. Even though I do like that Bob hides his feelings in front of his kids. I think this one landed a bit more for me.
Okay, I think Scrooge was done better. It's a real gut punch of Bob's character in Scrooge.
Yeah.
Well, true, but it's also like he's such an optimistic up guy, happy and jolly.
You see
and then it's such just a punch of actually him like crying over the death of Tim. Yeah. This one is, he's not, he's a mundane dude. He's not really joyous or, happy a lot. He's just, he's thankful. But the passing, the only really bit you get is him trying to like conceal his sorrow in his daughter's shoulder, and then he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, you get two different experiences from one. I'm talking about what I prefer as my personal experience of what I subjectively prefer. So in the first one, you get the gut punch because Bob fell from being the joyful, like happy dude that we know him as from before to him crying over the body. That's pretty much it's a 180, but like it's a well-earned 180. Like it's a clear transition of character. In here, it's not really a transition of character because it's still Bob, but like there's a lot more interconnectivity with how the family functions around the death of one of its members. So I'm saying that I prefer this personally because I like the interconnectivity with the family stuff more so than I do the personal lone stuff. But
yes, that's what I was trying to match my example of with as well. Like what I personally liked as well.
Yeah, I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're both extremely effective for different reasons.
Okay. I guess for my POV, I also prefer the Scrooge version. I guess I'll jump to Future. I like how Future's kind of genie-esque with how particular it is with Scrooge's words. Show me tenderness and depth of feeling. He showed that through Bob, but it
Monkey's
had no
paw.
relation. It had no relation to Scrooge's death. It was somebody else's death. It had nothing to do with Scrooge. But Scrooge didn't say tenderness and depth of feeling for his death. He just said tenderness and depth of feeling. And he did that. And then show me an emotion towards my death, and it was the happiness of his death from the grave robbers or whatever, the opportunists. So there was a genie aspect with Future playing with Scrooge's words that I liked.
This is going to be a weird way to describe it. I think I quite like in this version. Comparing this to Scrooge, Future doesn't have a direction or intent with Scrooge, other than he is taking Scrooge's words very at face value, literally playing with the words. That's pretty much all he's doing. So Future feels directionless almost, and I actually quite like that aspect of Future. Like that Scrooge is the one that's giving up the hints of what he needs to be shown, almost. So it's not that Scrooge is leading Future, but that Future is just taking advantage of what Scrooge is giving him. So he's showing Scrooge what he wants, just in the, as you say, a very genie-esque way. I actually very much like that.
What do you think, Spriggs?
I like the genie approach, but I do believe that Ghost of Yet to Come has a direction of where he's taken Scrooge.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, obviously, the direction is the grave.
Get him to change.
Yeah, it's still there's still direction there, but it's more abstract with Future. Like he's letting Scrooge kind of like Scrooge has one hand on the wheel too, because Future is still showing where
an abstract that Crimson likes. How rare.
I don't feel like it was that abstract, honestly, but
like the idea that he's using Scrooge's the Future's using Scrooge's words to kind of help twist the changes into what he's being shown.
Yeah,
because obviously
it's a very interesting then that each ghost has a different form of torment onto Scrooge, of one of like past mistakes, one of reused words and feeling, and then this one of words in term kind of thing.
It's just very literal sense of the word. I kind of like it because it adds to like the death specter of what Future is intended to kind of look like. In the way that and the words are gone. Oh well, sorry.
Well, I know some audience members like, Springs, what are you talking about? That's what all ghosts are. That's what they're doing. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, yes, but this version is depicting it more so, I think, or easier for me to see or something.
I did that point. Someone else go.
Springs, what are you doing?
All right, I think it's funny that when they go to, was it Joe, old man, or whoever the fence who takes in like the grave robbers' items, when they get there, even though it's teleportation because they're there like instantly, Scrooge goes, "I think you took a wrong turn." I just thought that was a funny line for the use of teleportation.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh, you must be mistaken. One of your cohorts already took me here.
No, not to Bob
No,
Cratchit's.
not that part. No, the fence, the people selling stuff. Obviously, saying wrong turn as in you took me to the wrong place, not literally they took the wrong turn.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
But I get the sentiment.
Instant teleportation. It's like you took a wrong turn.
Yeah.
I was focusing on the different aspect of the joke. My bad. I will. Fuck it. I'll jump to the grave scene. I think one of the reasons this Scrooge was more subdued character-wise is for this scene specifically, so that when he's not holding back, you get a far deeper sense of it.
Like his pleading and stuff here.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to. I think that was an intention that they did as there was an intention that George C. Scott applied as an actor. I can't prove that, but it feels like it because this obviously isn't subdued compared to the rest of his performance.
Yes, this is his character breaking.
Yeah, he almost gets there with the pleading when Presence abandons him, but this is like the final breaking point. Which is obviously is in the theme with a typical well-paced story, because now, he's looked upon the consequences of his actions, more or less.
Yeah, something complimented in Scrooge was how Scrooge was talking about how if this was set in stone or can it be changed, and they did that in this way more. he reiterated that like 3 times.
He's pleading
in different severity. Yeah.
He's pleading
before revealing the name,
which is why it works, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Got anything to add to that, Springs? Or just
No. You captured it pretty well.
Okay.
Do you think there's more on his grave than just his name?
You called him a moron? Probably date of birth, date of death.
Because honestly,
maybe a family crest
on the
or
look
something.
of it, I thought it was going to be horizontal and not the vertical.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because being that it is the vertical swipe of the name, I feel like there's got to be more on it. Otherwise, it's very just a blank. I think the reason why I thought it would be more horizontal is because he's kneeled, I guess, on the side of it. So I thought the name would be more like directly at him than him looking at an angle towards it.
I got you. Like James and Lily Potter's grave, Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Yes, but a snake lady wasn't staring at Scrooge in this one.
Not that we saw. But no, I see what you mean. If there could be an image etched into the stone lower. It could be a shared grave. Maybe it's with his mom.
With Marley?
Grave.
Oh, mom. Oh,
I don't know.
People bury themselves with their gay lovers all the time, Springs. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, whoa. Hey, I'm not against it. No. Actually, I'm for it. It's fine.
Who said that? No one said you were against it. Especially in 18... I forgot when this took place. 80-something.
Something like that?
1843?
43? I don't know. Whatever it was.
Yeah, because it was swapped when we covered Scrooge, which was 1934 is when the movie came out. But it was 1843, I think, is the story.
Yeah, that sounds right. Let's see. All right. A problem I had. I liked the lightning transit. I liked the lightning transitions that were being used to jump to locations here. But the one from Bob's house with the warm colors, and then the lighting on his face turns to blue, and then we get the lightning jump to the cemetery, which is a blue light on him, was too early. I don't know why they did the blue light on his face before the lightning transition, because they didn't do that on the other lightning transitions.
Yes,
they did actually when he was in the exchange, when it fades out and you see only his face for a second, and then the lightning strikes.
No, not the lightning. The blue light that they have before the lightning happens. That doesn't happen except here.
It happens at the warehouse exchange. Or am I remembering it wrong?
Pretty sure you're remembering it wrong. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but
I can swear that's how the exchange scene ended.
Both of you have me so confused. I know what happens. Now I don't know which one.
It ended with lightning. I don't think there was blue
They both
light
ended with lightning.
Yeah. It ends with the entire exchange like darkening out to just the pale blue lights on him, and then the lightning strikes and they transition out. That's how they did it, and that's how they do it most of the time for him. Because that's the one I remember outside of the grave scene. That's why I'm focused on that.
Well, you sound pretty confident, so I'll just say I don't know now.
If you are correct, Crimson, I will agree with you, but I'm pretty sure they've done it more than once.
Well, I guess I can't put this as an objective flaw because now it's in question. So, don't know.
I will say I really like the delivery of Scrooge's final monologue. Living in the past, present, and future, and all three spirits shall strive within him. He won't show the lessons out. I think those are the notes, like the cliff notes I remember of it. But
All right. Sorry, I pulled it up in the background. I got your answer.
Verdict.
There is no lightning transition from the fence to Bob Cratchit's house. There is a blue light spot onto Scrooge before the lightning strike, and Scrooge is not facing the window.
Okay.
But it does imply, without a lightning strike from the fence to Bob Cratchit's house, that Bob Cratchit's house is literally right around the corner. Because they're in the room with the guy buying the things.
Oh
and
yeah,
then
it's really weird.
Yet to come points, and Scrooge goes up some stairs, and the next shot of Scrooge turning a corner going downstairs, and he's outside Bob Cratchit's.
Yeah, it felt like he was walking through like physical portal doors almost.
Could be, or Bob Cratchit's house is honestly that close.
Yeah, or it is legitimately that close. I wish it was a little more clear.
Well, the lady that stole from Scrooge's house probably didn't have to go that far to carry it, so it could be within close proximity.
Possibly.
An interesting difference between the two Scrooges is the first Scrooge I feel is like an orator, because that's obviously a lot of actors who transitioned over to film or were stage actors first. So I feel like that is part of the reason why Scrooge does a lot of in Scrooge, that version of Scrooge does a lot of inflections of his voice, whereas I think here it obviously the voice is less of a focus up until the monologue, when like the voice obviously increases in its oration and stuff like that, because he's going from obviously whimpering tears to shouting and then back to whimpering tears. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, didn't Seymour Hicks in Scrooge play Scrooge for like 40 years or something?
Yeah, he played the role thousands of times with stage performances as well as doing 2 movies before the one we saw.
I feel like he knows that character in and out pretty well.
Yeah, like I said, one of the things that I'm just pointing out the difference in, I guess, how their two acting styles with approaching to the character, because one of it could come from the fact that he was very very much theater trained, Seymour Hicks. I'm not saying C. Scott wasn't, but like you can tell one with that was their acting career before they went to film, whereas C. Scott was like doing both potentially. So there's a little more of a balance, I guess, in his oration, or it could just be there are different interpretations of the character. I have no idea. I was just throwing an idea out.
Okay. I don't know.
All right, last call for future, I guess. Crimson, got any more?
I loved the introduction of Future, the tunnel, smoke, how it's just black, and then light from the sky illuminates from behind him, but it doesn't illuminate the whole area, isolating the silhouette, and there's like sticks and branches behind it, so it's kind of like there's a forest in the tunnel as well. It just looks very pretty. It's very stylized, looks nice.
I agree.
There's some good
and I heard
composition shots in this one.
I agree, and I heard "Screaming Women in the Desert" from the Dune soundtrack.
I think it's a great idea of what they were going for. I don't think it looks very dated.
I don't know if I agree with that. What about it is dated?
The end of the tunnel looks more like it's layered on top of the depiction of where yet to come is, and it's not necessarily the actual depth of field of where the tunnel would end.
Well, that lends to the like ethereal feel. Doesn't feel grounded because it's not. It's weird. That's the intention behind it.
Okay. I like the whole idea of it. I just don't like the look.
Anything else, Crimson? Or are you good? Was that your last point?
I think I'm good. I might have something later because I
Okay.
didn't read my entire act yet, so
All right.
I'm good to go.
Spriggs.
Zip zero nada.
All right. Then we will potentially throw tack more onto this, vertices onto this, depending on Crimson reading his act notes. But we shall commence with him waking up in his bed and the end. To the end.
All right, I brought it up before. I think Scrooge is more relieved that he is alive, more so than the change onto the Christmas spirit.
I disagree. If it was just that he's happy to be alive, he didn't have to do any of this other Christmas good stuff for others.
No. I'm not saying he isn't changed. I'm just saying I don't see the whole giddy as a drunk, energetic as a schoolboy, all that thing. I don't think that is because of the change. I think that is because he's alive.
I think it's
No.
both. I think it can absolutely be both.
No, because after his initial wake up where he's like, I'm alive, it's not referred to again. He's not like, I'm happy to be alive. Oh my gosh, he's jumping on the bed. It's not referred to again. It's just him waking up saying, I'm still alive.
I have a bit of an additional note to tack onto that. Kind of separate a little bit. But I like that when he hears the Christmas bells, he's off the bed because he fell asleep praying. Like he praying to survive the night.
Yes.
I very much love that detail.
I like I don't know many versions that do this where he's returned at, I guess, the end of 3 in the morning or whenever yet to come was, and he slept through it. It's not he wakes up in the morning. Like, it's not already morning when he wake. Like, he's there at night and then goes back to sleep.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. You had me confused for a second. But yes,
Yeah. There's a point where he goes back to bed.
That's the thing. I don't think he went back to bed. I think he was up praying all night.
He's asleep. What? He's asleep next to his bed.
Yeah, exactly.
At 9 in the morning.
Yeah, but the way he's there, like positioned, he's leaned onto the bed like he was praying on the bed. Because you know how sometimes in traditional movies where you have the person like on their knees next to the bed with their elbows up and they're praying on the bed?
Yeah.
That's kind of what he was. That's what I think he fell asleep doing.
Okay, that's fine, but he still fell back asleep.
Yeah.
He didn't immediately just get back into bed after a prayer.
Oh yeah,
I agree
yeah.
with you on that.
No.
But he prayed so much until it exhausted him.
Yeah, that's what I think he did.
Okay.
We might have just confused each other. Yeah, but we're in complete agreement.
Yeah, I just meant he still fell asleep.
Yes, he did fall asleep.
It wasn't after yet to come he woke up and it's already Christmas morning.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like that he was up praying to live through the night because he was so.
And unlike Scrooge, I like that he said he's actually on his knees, and he's actually on his knees.
That's true. Well, so the back to the original point, I guess, before we went on off that shoot. Does anyone remember what it was?
No, I haven't a clue what I. Sorry, it sounded like you were implying it was to something you knew.
Well, yeah, the original point was I don't know what it was, but I know it was an offshoot to what we were talking about him waking up in the morning or something like that.
Oh, just the previous thing. Oh, just saying like relieved of life.
Oh yeah,
versus Christmas spirit change, and you're saying it could be both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I said I disagreed because it's not shown past him waking up, acknowledging his life forward. It's just he woke up, I'm still alive. Everything else is joyful happiness towards the happiness, Christmas spirit, blah, 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 all that stuff.
Crimson, do you think there's any bit of him that's believed to be alive in that.
I would think so. He is a living creature, so I'd
Okay.
be surprised.
Okay, simple.
But
I
you
see
were
it
saying
as
it was more for that than the joy of
I do.
his lessons.
Yes, I see it as an 80-20. You see it as a 20-80,
Oh,
and Ryder
why?
sees it a 50-50. Why?
Why is it 80?
Because I don't see him change a lot. Like, not even, like, very subtle of these ghosts. And the morning isn't for Christmas spirit of, like, I will be a new person. I will change. It's more just like, I'm alive. Yay me. I can change who I am now. And he's just like giddy about that. And talking to the kid, the boy out the window who actually credited boy who gets turkey. What a credit. He's, talking under his breath, which I see as more of a relief, more so than the enjoyment of the day or to go about Christmas or keep it in a new way kind of thing.
Just so I don't misinterpret what you said, did you say he didn't learn anything from the ghosts?
No. I don't mean that. I'm just saying it's not like change is occurring to me. Like the past seems more just torment out of himself. Stop. I'm not saying he didn't learn from it. I'm saying from the past to the present, it doesn't look like he's changed at all. And then from the present, it looks like the part to me where it shows it's a part of change in Scrooge is sitting at the end of present waiting for yet to come to appear. And then yet to come is making him question a bunch of like, who is this you're showing me? Why are we here? This isn't what I asked for. A lot of questioning, more like a fight against more so than learning from where they are and questioning that until the graveyard where he asks, are these the events of what will be or what may be? Which I think is really into that. But even still, that's at the graveyard upon seeing his tomb of death, which is why I think it's played far more into the sake that he's alive.
I disagree, mostly because we've already left citations of how he changed throughout all of them. But I guess
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I fundamentally disagree. I felt like he changed in each version, as Ryder said. We were talking throughout. He cares about Tim in the present. It's not just him. He cares about if he can fix Tim, and we learn that by his actions after the future. I don't think him pleading for change, if things can change, is can I survive past tonight? So, okay.
All right. Yep, I'm 80-20.
All right. So, what do you think of the turkey size? Turkey size was hilarious this time because it actually looked like it was bigger than Tiny Tim.
Well, true, but it was more depicted for the kid who got it than of Tiny Tim.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Scrooge references Tiny Tim this time. Like in Scrooge, like in Seymour's Scrooge. Was it Seymour? Did I say that right?
Seymour Hicks.
Seymour Hicks. Okay. Like in Seymour's Scrooge, like they reference like, oh, that this is gonna be twice the size of Tiny Tim or whatever, bigger than Tiny Tim. It wasn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But here, I think this one actually is the size of Tiny Tim, but I don't think he references it.
I believe so, yeah. I do like, as I think I said in Act 1, I like that he, in Act 1, says, do you wish to be anonymous? And he goes, no, I wish to be left alone, meaning he doesn't want to be anonymous. Yet here, he wishes to be anonymous for the goose being sent. So I like that change of him.
I also like that we could see the Bob Cratchit family react to the fucking.
Yeah, that's also cool. Let's see. When he goes to Fred's house and he knocks on the door, it's a real movie angle shot moment, which is a little nitpick. But when he goes to Fred's and knocks on the door and Fred looks out his window, Scrooge has obviously taken like 7 steps back so he can be in frame.
That's true. I don't disagree with that.
Which is just odd.
Okay. Sprinks, in Scrooge, you brought up at the end that you didn't care for Scrooge saying, God bless us, everyone. You didn't care for it. You referenced the previous ones you've seen where Tiny Tim says it. We looked it up that the book says it. In this one, the narrator says it. What do you think on that?
I think it's fine because the narrator to me is Charles Dickens. Even though played by Roger Rees, who is Fred, I think the narrations of the beginning and end of this movie are Charles Dickens' words. So as him writing the book or saying the words, I think fits fine.
But it takes it away from the characters.
Yes. But it's the words of him writing. It's meta in that form. It's the creator saying the words, and instead of the characters himself of who it was given to say them.
We talked about how rushed it felt. That kind of in the vein of that, since we're on the narrator, we kind of talked about how rushed it felt for Scrooge promising to be a second father to Tiny Tim. I think I don't have that issue here because it's in the hands of the narrator, and it's said after a implied amount of time has passed.
Yeah, Tim can run now without.
So
crutches,
yeah, obviously
so there was a time jump.
So I actually quite liked the usage. It didn't feel rushed to me. It felt like a bookend, like he just kind of wrapped the character up, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I did like the usage of the word from the narrator of like Tiny Tim did not die. Because there's a whole story to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between this and Scrooge, Bob got a raise. This, he got a doubled salary.
He got doubled, which confirms more of what he's getting paid now. Versus a raise, which is kind of open-ended. Yeah.
I quite enjoyed the shock that Bob is going through. Like he thinks something's completely wrong with Scrooge.
Well, he doesn't look like he's going to punch him in this one.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Bob's so scared to point out a difference that because if he points it out, he thinks Scrooge would change his mind.
Yeah,
he's so uncomfortable with what's happening and confused.
It's very much.
He doesn't want it ruined by bringing it up.
It's very much in character for this version of Bob, because obviously Scrooge Bob would celebrate the hell out of what's going on, but this Bob is just so taken by surprise. And
Yeah, I do like the sequence that plays out very well of the prank in this one. Well, also Bob being 18 and a half minutes late is a little much. But him getting to the door and it's already unlocked, and then Scrooge standing in the windowsill to silhouette himself.
Yeah, and the look on Bob's face when he realizes the door's unlocked is so good because he knows what he's in for.
Yeah, I think that's played out very well.
And again, I agree. I like the silhouette as well, the sun behind him, or the outside behind him.
Especially since the last character we saw depicted as that is yet to come, which bears death or ill tidings. So it's interesting to go off of that to this, of a depiction of Scrooge, but I think is just nicely connected.
Yeah, I liked Scrooge's reaction to realizing Bob was late to work. He was happy that Bob was late.
Yeah, because he gets to play a prank on him. Nice. He got to. Yeah. I think he wanted to do that from the beginning, I guess.
Bob, you're late, of course, smiling and excited about an opportunity that laid before him.
I also really love Scrooge reconnecting with his nephew, and connecting for the first time with his wife.
Yes, and he used the power of time travel, which was funny, of telling her, "Hey, tight as a drum."
Yes,
I want to make sure you know that.
Which is a little goofy, but I approve. It helped them bond in that scene. But I very much enjoy just the way he just apologizes to them and like wants to apologize for the lost time, and he's like again really rekindling the familial connection, which obviously this film plays up a lot more with the nephew. So I think it's very much of this film's strength that they nail this. I think because he's one of the things that they don't really do well, at least with a few other iterations of Scrooge that are Christmas Carol to think of, is they don't really do well with the whole giving up his pride bit. They just like it's 180'd without an apology almost. And I do very much like the fact that he apologizes to them, which for me is a lot more lands a lot more when you're shedding the pride of your past self.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
yeah.
agree with that, yeah.
I have one big nitpick that this movie was doing so well with and then didn't. I was pleased that this movie didn't name Tiny Tim, and they just called him Tim or Young Tim. He wasn't talked down to because of his deficiency. And it was going so... Right? Yeah, anyone just calling him Tim. Loved it until the end where the narrator calls him Tiny Tim.
So how does it feel to have Charles Dickens call him Tiny Tim?
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, it's a choice to use those words because they could have gone over it.
Charles Dickens calls him Tiny Tim in the book, so
yes.
Why wouldn't he say it in the narration?
No. It makes sense for in the narration to say it, but the choice of using that bit of the book of the narration to use is what I'm getting at. Like, they could have just gone over anything to do with Tiny Tim of the narration. So that way they would have kept it as Tim.
Kind of lost now what the problem you have with it is.
The narration calls him Tiny Tim, which means in the movie there is a name given to him of Tiny Tim.
Mm-hmm.
It's better for the usage of Charles Dickens' words of the book to be called Tiny Tim for him, rather than the Charles Dickens depiction to just call him Tim and skip out Tiny, because then it's a loss of words of the character. But the choice of the movie making to have the narration use that part to say Tiny Tim is the choice they made to still use it in the film.
And you find that as a negative?
I find it as like a bittersweet thing, or I don't know, a sour grape and a bunch of sweet, or something like that.
I forget.
They were doing so well just calling him Tim until that.
Is this a subjective or an objective issue?
Subjective.
Okay. All right. Clears up everything. All right.
I was going to ask. I guess this goes to your subjective, Springs. You seem to take a lot of issue with him being called Tiny Tim at all. So I guess my question is why.
It's name calling. It feels so weird of your family to call you Tiny Tim. Like, a sibling thing is fine because they do that a little in Scrooge. But when your mom and father and anyone else who knows you calls you that, it seems just cruel.
Well, what if your dad calls you Squirt like that? Are you like, no, a father can't say that. That insults the child. It's a nickname. They call him Tiny Tim. He takes no offense to it in the versions I've seen. Is Squirt bad? Or
I don't think so. What's the definition of squirt?
Little.
Squirt's little?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, okay. With that definition, is that a problem?
Squirt Tim?
No. A parent calling their child Squirt. Is that a problem? Because you're saying them calling Tiny Tim is a problem.
It's a very subjective thing. It just seems mean.
It's very much I get what you're saying, Springs. I think for me, what I usually do is, if the character's not offended by it, I'm not offended by it. Is typically what I go with. Because obviously they don't mean it as an insult. They mean it as a term of affection. Because they obviously still care for him a great deal. It comes across as his nickname in at least in Scrooge for sure.
Yeah, or most versions, but
Yeah.
this one just called him Tim, like the whole time, and then it kind of breaks it at the end with the narration usage.
That's fair. All right, I was just curious. Crimson, you got any other points?
There was one that I thought of that wasn't in my notes, but it's gone now.
Rip that point now lost to the void. Springs, do you have any more?
God. Looking at my notes, I think I'm fresh out. Because I read the last note I had was the boy who gets turkey is credited as boy who gets turkey in the credits.
Let's see.
I guess compliments to George C. Scott for his energetic performance jumping onto the bed and stuff. It was a little interesting to see. You don't see too many like older guys.
Oh yeah, he
that
went
energetic on
full
screen.
Childish. I appreciated that.
Yeah. I mean, even like Night at the Museum, when they're full of childish energy, it doesn't feel quite the same as this. This is him doing it. It's not like cuts to a stunt person. This is an older guy actually doing this, and it's I liked seeing it. It's cool. I don't know how old he was during this.
What a comparison!
Well, I mean, that's a scene where older people get rejuvenated with youth.
Yeah.
So
Well, for that, I would only take Dick Van Dyke. The other two,
Mile Driver. Yeah, I mean, they are being young.
Yeah. Dick Van Dyke's really spry for his old age.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't have anything left, having just finished my notes. So, it's on you, Crimson, if you got anything more.
Okay. Yes, it was something from last act. That's why. It was referring to an issue Sprinks had with Scrooge, which I think is also present here. But I'm curious about the severity in this one of how slow, in air quotes, Scrooge is to realizing who the dead person is.
Oh,
What do you think?
It's the same thing in Scrooge. It's just a naive thing. It's kind of dumb.
I mean, straight up a denial in this. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I was going more severity levels. Is it the same as Scrooge or better than Scrooge?
This is better than Scrooge because there isn't so much more to question on. Scrooge had a lot more questioning, which plays more into is the denial, I guess, of it.
Okay.
Because the Cratchit house is more focused on Tiny Tim, and then the other thing is just the exchange and the fence. Those are the only two instances of being questioned. But the fence in this one has one person, as opposed to the one in Scrooge had three.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed more to question on. And this one was smarter because he's like, those are my things. The one in Scrooge just went like, who are those people? Who they took their curtains from?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this one's a little smarter.
And this one, he didn't really acknowledge his curtains when he woke up, like Scrooge.
No, but he acknowledged his watch, and then he even still, no, yeah, they're still the same. He notices it's his things, but then he questions who is it.
He grabs
and then,
his. Well, he's like, oh, the denial part of it for me is like, I was like, they just look like my things, you know?
Yeah.
And then to kind of go on to what you said, Crimson, he does grab the bed sheets. He just doesn't exclaim about them. Like, he doesn't have a line of dialogue about them. He still grabs them and just playfully smiles at them before he dives under the bed. Or after, one of the two.
Oh, phew. Ooh. You really spiled my head there for a sec.
Sorry, I tried to specify that I was rebuffing Crimson's point.
Yeah, when he wakes up in the morning,
yes.
being giddy, he grabs a bed sheet. Okay, not in the scene with the fence, he grabs the bed sheets.
No, he does not do it. Okay. Got it. My bad. I should have communicated that.
Because that really goes back into the snow conversation. So, whew.
Well, gentlemen, if that's all, shall we move to summaries and ratings?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's all my notes.
All right. We are going to start today with Crimson.
I feel like there's a lot of days that start with Crimson. All right.
Like today.
Like today.
Exactly, like today. I will start with my subjective. I'll do that. I was really tackling because I picked Scrooge, the previous Christmas Carol we covered, because I quite like it. And I was tackling this whether or not I see them fairly even. There were some things I liked in one more than the other, but by the end of it, I think I enjoyed them about the same. So I'm also giving this a 7, matching my Scrooge, which was surprising because I thought this would be like a 6 or something, but I actually got some good enjoyment out of it. A lot of it being present, and I really enjoyed seeing future on screen. It was pretty cool how they did the stuff. I really liked his appearance in the tunnel. Going with objective, it's going to be kind of similar to Scrooge again, where I didn't see too many issues with character stuff. We do get more characters in this than in Scrooge with the flashbacks or past, I guess. We get more with Belle, which in this version, thankfully, doesn't feel rushed because we have some time with their relationship building up at the dance and stuff. We get the mask. What's the guy's name? Fluterflom? It's not Fluterflom.
Fluterflom?
I know. What's his name?
Who?
Who else starts with an F?
Fezziwig.
Fezziwig.
Sorry.
Fluterflom
Really flew me off there.
Please,
Black
They're
culture
both-
reference out of you?
cut that at those short.
They're both goofy names, all right? I already forgot.
Fezziwig.
Fezziwig. He's introduced in this one that wasn't in Scrooge, and I do like how he was a good influence on young Scrooge, because in this we get more Scrooge origin to explain why he is the Scrooge he is. Didn't have a great father. He kind of explained, and it's kind of up to interpretation if he meant it or if it was like an excuse, but the reason he goes for money is to build a better future for him and Belle. Kind of if you think he's just saying that to say it or if that's his true intention, don't know. But it's good to throw in there for his character. His Scrooge's back and forth with past on explaining the events that happened, like little boy him reading the book or explaining how he almost went after her when she broke up with him. I think is really good for his character going forward and laying the groundwork of things for present and future to exploit, because now he's vulnerable with his past stuff. Going to present's very brutal. He doesn't waste any opportunity that Scrooge lays before him. He squashes everything, which is nice. Even Scrooge with the silver lining of, I still helped Bob with this feast. Without me, it would be nothing. That's all you found? It's good stuff. The addition of the poor people stuff, definitely different from Scrooge. And I think it's a good addition. We talked heavily on the potential sacrifices of having the scene with not showing poor people earlier and making it more clean. And how that could potentially be intentional, because we don't know how they purposefully were implementing that. That's how I was viewing it as, which is why I'm implementing it here, that it was intentional. Man, I'm rambling a lot, and I haven't even touched that much. Future, I think the practical effects they used with the hand, the cloak, even some perspective, I think was really good. The lightning transitions were decent, even though there was slight inconsistency. I did go back and look as well to see there was blue lighting writer for the exchange, but it's different. It's not the same thing. So there's that. Writer Sprinks brought up some continuity errors that I didn't pick up on, so there was some continuity stuff. And costume design was pretty solid. Definitely for Marley, I really liked how Marley turned out. Holy cow, this is too long. So I am going to be matching Scrooge, funny enough, with an 8.5.
Wow, so this is just as well done as Scrooge for you.
I didn't find many issues with it. Objectively. I mean, there were things I enjoyed less, like Bob. I far more enjoyed Bob and Scrooge. But objectively, Bob's fine in this. He's just more subdued.
But other subjective things counterbalance that to equal
like
the
present,
6 as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll go next for a curveball here. Save Springs for last.
Oh boy.
The reason I'm going next is because there's going to be a lot of echoing, and Crimson did take a lot of things that I would normally say. So, that being said, I think I very much enjoyed this quite a bit. I had tons of... I think I like this a little bit more than Scrooge, but I'm pretty sure that's more to my... I guess my personal preference, which is obviously what subjective is supposed to be. I very much enjoyed the elongated character arc for Scrooge, because one of my issues that I think I mentioned it in the previous iteration for the 1930s version was he changed almost too quickly through the journey. Like he was already changed like halfway through present or a little bit before that. And this is more closer to what I traditionally like of Scrooge, is I like how each one changes him just enough to set him up for the next. Like past sets him up for present sets him up for future. And by the time he gets to future, he's a bit more of he's very, very vulnerable to kind of the last push that he needs to change. And so he was changing much slower over the course of it all. And I think I preferred that. So there's a lendings for me that I do prefer in this version. I do like, again, I think I talked about the interconnected family stuff with Bob a little bit more. And again, that's not taking away the objectivity of both versions. And so I think my subjective, if I recall correctly, was a 7 as well for Scrooge. I'm at a 7.5, or I'm going to be at a 7.5, or I'm going to be at a 0.5 above whatever Scrooge was at.
You had it at 6.5 for Scrooge.
Okay, then yeah, I'll be at a 7 then. I'll be at a 7. I think it's solid. So I'll be matching Crimson, which makes this next one even funnier. Because I'm also at an 8.5.
There an echo in here?
Yeah, there is now. I think I agree with a lot of what Crimson said in terms of the writing aspect with regards to the characters and how they play off each other. It's very, very well done. I love Scrooge's character arc, obviously, and it's good stuff. Very good stuff. I think if I were to cherry pick my issues, I have a couple nitpicks here and there of things that could be improved, removed, just for sake of pacing and quality of life. We talked about the pacing of introducing Marley's face in the mantle of the fireplace. That kind of ruins the pacing of the scene, which I could tie a little bit into plot. There's stuff like that there's a few spots of that in here. I think otherwise the plot is, funny enough, very similar to the previous film. I think the improvements upon the plot when compared to the first has to do with Present being an actual character in this when compared to the last. and how much it adds more relevancy to the story by flushing out who Scrooge was, so therefore we can move into who he is, and then obviously what he's going to be. And we don't really get a sense of that with past in Scrooge outside of a very, very rushed Bell plot. So I think that's very much a good addition to this film. Um, and not to harp away on changes too much, the world building, we kind of went over it. The London's less of a character, but nothing is really hurt by what's going on. There are preferences. Like, I understand Sprinks' preference to want to show off like some random poor person on the street. I doesn't tie into world building for me because they do reference the poor regularly enough, and Scrooge confuses Tim enough, like as a beggar. So there is stuff there for me to prevent it from being a world building problem. But I will admit, with that discussion, it was kind of approaching the verge of it. But I think they narrowly avoid that. So the world building is fine. There's some inconsistencies with the ghosts that we've talked about. I would tie that into the world building as well, but it's usually to be expected. The character work, fantastic. There's not really much I could say and no character was acting out of character. It's a different portrayal, but I view it as an equivalent level for what was done in the first Scrooge. Arguably, the things that changed character-wise is just flushing out Scrooge as a character more, which I think makes the payoff of where the character ends up a little more satisfying, because we have who he was, got who he is, and then we got to see who he will become, or a potential of what will become of him. So, solid 8.5 from me. Very good movie. Which would leave you, Spence.
Can I throw an amendment in my score?
All right.
Uh-oh.
Objective 8.5 to an 8, please. I totally spaced my problem that I had of him interacting with the snow. And him not... I think if he took it as he can't interact with physical objects, he took it that way, I think he would challenge and try to touch something, because he challenges the talking several times. So even if we're saying that he can interact with stuff, he would have tried earlier to just try it. So I do see that as a little flaw. And then with Marley's sound effects that I brought up earlier with the changed a little bit of an audio thing. So 8.
Thank you for reminding me about the chains.
Yeah, funny enough, Crimson, I think you just reminded me stuff too. I'm going to drop to an 8. And not to match you again, but...
Oh, what a copycat.
I know. But I did forget a couple of those things, so genuinely. It's not to be a copycat. He made several valid points. Sprinks, you're it.
Gotcha. I had, some time to think on. When you bring up how I said possible world building on the poor, I think it did something I prefer less of, where it did a tell instead of a show.
So that would affect your subjective, yes?
Yes, I think that's where I have it as.
Okay.
There is no show of it, it's just simply dialogue talk of it. Let's see, I'll start with my subjective. Slight echo. This movie has things I prefer more than Scrooge and things I dislike more than Scrooge, but overall, comparatively, I have it also matched at a 6 of my score from Scrooge. I think it's just a good Christmas Carol story. Objectively, I have this lower than my other one because I think there are far more good actors in this movie than bad. I think there are some lighting issues, like the candle or the blue light with the lightning. I went back and checked Crimson. He's right on that. There's some... It's a problem with the budget and the TV made of like how much they could use and could not use kind of thing, like what went with what. So I don't really fully want to demerit that onto it. I think there's a little bit of editing things that could have been done. I mean, the big one is the Marley on the Last Supper look. I don't know why that's there. Just maybe a cool idea kind of thing, but it could have been moved if needed. So really don't like that usage of it. To the adaptation of the book, the dialogue has a lot of creative liberties, which I think is totally fine, because the story is still met and words are said that are matched to the book of the source material. I think the cinematography is fine. There's some really good shots and there's some not really good shots. So I think that kind of averages out a little. Best shot we talked about, which I'm in agreement of, is the alleyway shot of Scrooge on his way home. And I still think the carriage perspective, whatever that was, is the worst looking thing. I said source material, so the writing's fine. The world adaptation of this, of being a more mundane look onto characters of England and this take on it, I think works well because everyone's consistent in that look of it. No one's really like a whole different character of it. Fred,
It's grounded. No one's cartoonish, kind of.
yeah, but it works for Bob, Fred, Scrooge. They're all the set. Even the ghosts aren't fully, whimsical, I guess, in versions. They're very stuck to what they're. I mean, the Christmas present here is very stuck to his guns, but he's not boisterous or large in nature. Scaring Scrooge by his side or something like that. Intimidating. Sorry, not scaring. But yeah, I think it has a little things not as good as Scrooge overall in the making of the film. And I want to point, I brought it up in Scrooge for the 30s of its time with the advancements of what it had to work with. Definitely credited that score to go higher because it can't be compared to films of, nowadays because it just didn't have access to things like that. So being this film was in the 80s, again, the budget unsurely, but I feel like there's some things they could have saved on and other things. I have it as a 7.5. So it's not horribly done at all. I think this is a very good take and depiction of Christmas Carol. I just think there are some things they could have tweaked or definitely raised it better.
All right. Well then, gentlemen, any final thoughts before I read us out?
No.
I don't think so.
All right. I mean, that was A Christmas Carol, 1984 with George C. Scott, everybody. Thank you for listening, whether it be Spotify, Amazon, Castbox, Good Pods, iHeartRadio, Podcast, and Samsung. And if you are on our visual side of things, be it YouTube or Rumble, thank you for watching and listening there, seeing our PNG Super slideshow. Feel free to comment, feel free to subscribe, comment anywhere. Tell us that you hate our opinions or how much you love them. As always, I have been a Geeky Writer.
I'm Crimson Maroon.
And I'm Springs.
And we wish you happy holidays. Later, everybody.
Bah humbug.
Toodaloo.